Hello?
Hi, Liz. How are you? Got the glasses, but no water today.
Can you find
Find what?
the five things for the number two?
Yeah,
It's
I
on the
have to
town
search around for
website.
them.
on
Oh, yeah, these are,
Select Board.
it should be on the select boards.
Okay, let me find it. Here we are, almost there. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, let me bring the Brattleboro Selectboard meeting to order for Tuesday, February 3rd, 2026. This is a regular meeting of the Select Board. Let's see. John, has the meeting been properly warned?
Yes, it was.
Great. Are there any adjustments to the agenda? All right, seeing none. Chair remarks. Well, now that the budget discussion is put to rest for the time being, I'm happy to report that the Select Board can begin work on our Select Board priorities that we identified at our retreat. And I'm just letting you know what those 5 things are. It is increase revenues, advocate for state revenue sharing, work towards child safety zones, expand housing stock, and prioritize financial responsibility and health. I have been advocating for state revenue sharing, and I'm sure we'll hear more about that. And we will hear tonight about expanding the housing stock. So stay tuned as we begin that work in the upcoming months. And let's see. Oh, and I just want to mention that if there's a lot of people who want to speak this evening, and there's sign-up sheets for each topic. So if you'd like to speak on a certain topic, order is preferred if you sign up. So please do that. And John, do you have manager's comments?
Yeah, just a couple of things tonight. Absentee ballots for the March 3rd town meeting day and Wyndham Southeast School District elections will be mailed to those who have requested them on or around February 11th. Voters may now begin requesting their ballots to be mailed by logging into their voter portal at vote.vermont.gov or by emailing the town clerk's office at townclerk@brattleboro.gov or by calling them at 802-251-8157. In-person early voting will begin on or around February 17, and an announcement will be made once that option is ready. Quarter 3 taxes and water sewer payments are due on or before 5 p.m. Tuesday, February 17th. Please be mindful that Monday, February 16th is President's Day, and town offices are closed for that holiday. That's all I had.
Thank you. Are there Select Board members who wish to comment? All right then.
I would love to,
Go
actually. I just want to inform the viewers at home that I was snowshoeing with friends and I got a twig in my eye.
Oh, dear.
So if you see me with a very red eye, that's the reason why. Gabbing with friends, not paying attention. I also would like to announce that I'm running for the 3-year Select Board seat for the election.
Well, Amanda, there are a number of people on either side of the table who are running for office. Isaac, do you would like to make an announcement?
Sure, I'm running for re-election for a 1-year seat.
And I am running for re-election for the 3-year seat. And there are several candidates in the audience. I see Ken Fay, who's also running for the 3-year seat, Randy Blodger, who's running for the 1-year seat, and Dina Chadwick is running for the 1-year seat. Is there anyone else that I have not recognized? All right then. Let's begin with public participation. And again, this is for items. Yes, ma'am?
I wanted to take part in public participation.
Oh, haven't gotten it out of my mouth yet. All right, public participation. This is people, anyone who would like to speak about an item that is not on the warned agenda. And let me begin by saying that, thank you. If there, I will not permit personal attacks of anyone of any kind this evening. So let's start our public participation with that. And Jen, you want to speak?
Oh, once again, it's very short. Jenna Seymour, representative, town meeting member for District 8 and member of the Brattleboro Planning Commission. I want to address an issue that came up at last night's Planning Commission, and that was the fact that I often come to this mic and identify myself as a member of the Brattleboro Planning Commission. And I want to state to the Select Board and to the public for the record that at no point will I ever be speaking from this microphone on behalf of the Planning Commission. The reason why I identify myself that way is because I feel an ethical responsibility to the public of this town so that they are reminded of the positions of trust that I hold in this town. So if anything that comes out of my mouth from this microphone is something that they want to hold against me when my time for reelection or reappointment comes up, that is their right to do so. And I feel very strongly about openness and transparency in government. And so that's why I do that. At no point will I ever speak from this microphone on behalf of the Brattleboro Planning Commission without the express approval by vote in council of my fellow commissioners. I may occasionally speak my own opinion as a commissioner, but that should in no way be taken as the opinion of the Brattleboro Planning Commission. Thank you.
Thank you. I have two names here. I'm going to start with them. Ivan Hennessy.
Hello, Ivan Hennessy. I have two questions for you all regarding public safety. The first one is, when do you expect to have the walk signal call button in front of the Latches Hotel repaired? It lights up and it makes noises and it does not affect the signal in any way. And the other is, do you expect the south stairwell in the transportation center to be functioning before the north stairwell has to be closed because of the extensive rust on the railing that is, it's impressive actually. It's kind of geometrical and it's growing. It's a fun little science experiment, but it's not going to be safe for much longer.
Thank you for pointing out how well Brattleboro does rust. Okay, Randy and then Sue.
Hi, Randy Blodgett, District 7 Select Board candidate. I just wanted to invite everybody. I had the pleasure of going to America 250 last week at the library. It's on the library calendar of events. There are some things planned. There's more ideas. We could use more people there to celebrate what's going on this year, as well as Vermont's anniversary into the following year. There's some things at the Creamery Bridge, other things on the river with like a boat regatta that are planned so far, is my understanding. So come out, help, get some more ideas. I think it's a worthwhile cause.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak under, oh yes, Sue. And the man behind Randy, but Sue first.
Sue Belleville, Brattleboro. Question for Monday for the tax payment. Is anyone going to collect from that collection box that's out in the parking lot on the holiday? Just wanting to make sure if I drop my payment off that it would not sit there till Tuesday. Thank you.
On the spot. I not sure, Sue. Let me find that out and I'll get you that information.
We have another meeting on Thursday, so I'm sure that John will be able to get that information to the public by then.
I may have it by later this meeting.
Person behind Randy, please.
My name's Wally Bly. It's my first time doing this,
Oh,
so
right.
I don't know if I'm doing it right or not.
You're doing fine so far.
Wanted to make some statements about BCS and some of the things I read online about what was said about them and kind of clear them up from my point of view. Brattleboro Common Sense.
Oh,
They were really helpful to me when I was down and out. You know, they gave me a place to stay, rides to appointments, doctor's appointments and stuff, and helped me get back on track. And I just read some statements, like somebody said that it's better out to sleep out in the snow than at that place. I just wonder if anybody up there had experience of sleeping outside or not, you know, before you say stuff like that.
well, happily, Wally, the select board is not the police of social media.
All right. Well, I guess up here to stick up for them and say that, you know, I think you guys, like the town spent a lot of money in like shutting them down and, you know, going against them when they're a pretty big help. I mean, you got people outside in the streets. I understand, like, I done my own thing to get myself in that situation. I got nobody to blame but myself, but if something like that is there to help, like, I think that the town would be more supportive of it than against them. I really don't know what else to say. I hope you understand what I mean by that, but, I mean,
Thank you for your comment.
Thank you.
Ken?
Ken Vay, District 8. I would just like to say that with the 6 people here running for office, that 4 weeks from now is Election Day. And I hope everyone here in this room, I assume everyone here in this room will vote. I assume everybody watching online will vote. But I would recommend and hope that we get the people who don't vote to vote. 29% last year on a contentious year. You know, isn't that good? Get our neighbors to vote. Everybody probably knows people who don't vote. Ask them why, talk to them, speak with them, get them to vote. 250 years, Randy talked about the America 250. We had no taxation without representation. And now we're voluntarily not being represented by not voting. Anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, John?
So I have an answer to Sue's question.
Oh, great.
It will not be picked up on the holiday, but it will first thing on Tuesday.
And the deadline is the Tuesday, right?
The deadline is the Tuesday.
Yeah. Okay, so that was public participation, and now we'll have the consent agenda. John, do you want to?
Yep, you want a summary?
Yes, please.
There's 10 items on the consent agenda tonight. If you approve this agenda, you'll be approving the annual certificate of highway mileage for 2026 for the town. You'll be approving a tobacco substitute endorsement permit for the Walgreens on Putney Road and also the one on Canal Street. You'll be approving first and third class liquor license renewals for Midnights at 2 High Street. You'll be approving the certificate of no appeal for the 2025 grand list. You'll be approving renewals of first and third class liquor licenses and an outside consumption permit for Springree Marina on Springree Road. You'll be awarding a contract for $75,800 to Stantec for the 2024 Transportation Alternatives Grant to design a sidewalk on Fairgrounds Road. You'll be approving a first-class liquor license for Halo Hollow at 75 Elliott Street. You'll be approving a first-class liquor license and annual entertainment license for Saffron Restaurant at 889 Putney Road. You'll be approving a contract with Southern Vermont Solar to install a photovoltaic solar array on the roof of the Brooks Memorial Library for a cost of $186,340. And finally, you'll be approving a parade permit for the Asian Cultural Center of Vermont's February 8th parade on Main Street from the museum to High Street and back.
Thank you, John.
Yep.
Does any select board member wish to pull an item from the consent agenda? Seeing none, would someone like to make a motion?
Wait.
Isaac?
I move to accept the consent agenda as presented.
Great. Isaac has moved to accept the consent agenda as presented. All select board members in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
And that's 5-0. All right, on to the regular business. Item A, Town on Scene Media Management. John?
Yeah, I can do a little introduction on this. So last week, the Select Board received multiple messages from members of the public regarding the on-scene management of media by town staff. And this is a regular occurrence. We see media sneaking up on the Select Board right here. This is a regular occurrence for town staff in several departments: fire, police, DPW, library, and rec and parks. It's something that town staff are dealing with all the time. I asked the town attorney to put together information regarding the concerns that were raised. And I just wanted to let the board know that all town staff receive training on First Amendment rights. This happens as any new employee is onboarded to the town, and also has been done for all current employees. Staff often get recorded by members of the public, and they're truly doing their jobs under the spotlight every day, and it's not always easy. Our policy is to allow recording while preventing obstruction, danger, or the disclosure of protected information. Town staff are available here to answer any questions that the board has about their experience with the public, including the media on work scenes. The town attorney can address the legal issues concerning this. I've been asked by several people on different sides of this issue if we could please avoid personal attacks tonight. Liz, you mentioned that. I've also would ask if we could instead try to look at this issue from a policy standpoint and try to keep our emotions from overtaking our opportunity to really stay open-minded and curious about this. And if there's some improvements that town staff can make, we're open to doing that. So I would invite Bob or Hannah to explain the legal issues around just the things that we're up against as public servants.
Thank you.
And Hannah put together this memo that's in your packet, but generally speaking, the right to record public officials in a public place is protected by the First Amendment. So if you want to film, so long as you are in a public space and you're not interfering with the emergency personnel, whether it's the fire or police attending to a scene, so long as you're not interfering, you have the right to film. That's a First Amendment right. Some states have tried to put in buffer zones, and at least 4 cases have struck down such buffer zones on First Amendment grounds. So, and then John, you gave me a copy of a bill that's been introduced in the Vermont House that puts in a 25-foot buffer zone, very similar to a couple of these others that got shot down. So as that bill goes through the legislature, it's going to have to pass any of these First Amendment challenges, if indeed it makes it to being passed. But from town council, our advice to the select board, both on First Amendment grounds and based, now that I know that there's a state bill that's being introduced on preemption grounds, it is our advice to the select board not to pass such an ordinance with regard to these buffer zones based on First Amendment grounds. You have no right of privacy in a public place. If, as much as I might not love it if somebody were walking in front of me on Main Street and had their camera out and videotaping me, I'm in a public place, I have no right of privacy there. That person can film me, and as we just all need to remain calm and respect people's First Amendment rights. Hannah, anything you want to add?
No, but just to clarify what Bob said before, all of the buffer zone laws that have been passed have been struck down. There's only been 4. It's not that only 4 have been struck down. It's 100%.
Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, Select Board. Do you have anything you wish to say on the topic?
I'd love to
Go
inquire
ahead.
of the attorney. Hannah and Bob, can you speak to private property? What are the rules and boundaries there?
With regard to private property, that's a private landowner can say no trespassing, get off my property, etc. If there's obviously an emergency there and the fire or police are responding, they have the right to, as first responders, respond, but the media does not, and especially if the private landowner says no, get off my property, that's a matter of a private property owner's right.
One more question. Is it required that the property owner articulate the no trespass, or can it happen from a first responder as well?
It has to be articulated by the homeowner, or it needs to be posted, or there needs to be some notice to the person that's trespassing that they are trespassing. And if the landowner gives permission, then law enforcement can issue that no trespass on their behalf.
Got it. Thank you.
Oscar?
Yes, thank you. It's a really difficult one. I completely share the frustration of everyone who's contacted us as somebody who's been the target of these sorts of things in the past. I completely empathize. It's infuriating. However, we don't get to pick and choose what the Constitution protects, nor should we. And the same rights that protect somebody doing something you might not like here in Brattleboro, for example, are also the same rights protecting people filming, ice in Minnesota, or many other things that people want to have a public record of. So often government is not the right remedy. It's difficult and unfortunate, and there are things that we all wish weren't happening, but it's not always our role to legislate that. To frame the public discussion, the part I'm most interested in, the parts I'm most interested in are the ones where the town does have discretion, particularly that transition from a public space to a private space. So that's something where I think we could have more conversation between meetings about understanding the parameters there. But I've been wrestling with this for a couple days, and I'm not sure we have an option here. And the things we could try to do that would probably get struck down, I don't think I would want to do because of their broader implications. So sometimes the best remedy is to give things like this as little oxygen as possible, which unfortunately we're kind of breaking that rule here, but that's inevitable. And so I'm looking forward to hearing public comment and hearing what everyone has to say. Thank you.
How about this side of the table?
Nothing at this time.
Peter?
I'll just hold my comment until.
Okay. Bob and Hannah, let me just ask, can you explain, or maybe someone else from the staff, a little bit more about what this training that the town staff gets about this topic, about the First Amendment rights and so forth?
What I think you're talking about is what was John spoke to with regard to the First Amendment auditors who come and will film people, whether it's a clerk or somebody doing a job at Public Works. And the Vermont League of Cities and Towns puts on a training there that essentially says it's their right to do that. You need to be polite as John said in his memo, the main issue there is be calm, be professional, do your work, and go from there. So that's the training that town staff gets from the League of Cities and Towns. And then that's a little bit different than an emergency scene where the police or fire are showing up, and they're trained and have their own protocols with regard to an emergency scene. And that's where you need to trust your experts with regard to that on how to properly assess either a crime scene or an emergency fire scene, something like that.
Thank you, John.
Yeah, and Chief Simons and Chief Hardy are here if you would like to hear about their approach on those scenes, if the select board is interested.
Yeah, I would. Could we have Chief Hardy and Chief Simons come to the table? Good evening. Thank you for coming.
Oh, you're welcome.
Chief, would you like to begin?
Sure. It's pretty, I think the dynamics between the fire department response and the police response are a little bit different. When we have an incident that's, I would say, large or intense enough for media to be present, we have a command post set up. And our experience and how the media responds to that is they always come to the command post. We're very obvious who's running the incident. They come to the command post, they'll ask the incident commander questions, they'll ask if they're allowed to take pictures of certain events of the fire, of the car accident. We'll allow them to do that within reason. Sometimes we say, hey, we can't talk to you right now because we're in the middle of an operation, so we never allow it to deter from an operation. My experience so far in Brattleboro, everybody's been very respectful. They've always respected my wishes when I say, hey, this is okay, this is not okay. And that's been our interaction so far. We have not had a lot of instances with, like on private property or where the scene is like just a traditional EMS call that doesn't have a lot of units involved. We also haven't had, they're not coming to the firehouse and saying, hey, we're demanding an interview with your individual people or anything like that. We do have a media policy that states, any and all interviews are done through myself or the assistant chief. So we don't, the rest of the employees aren't to just go talk to the media and share their opinions.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Chief Hardy?
Yes, that's basically a lot of things that we put in place also, that only lieutenants are able to give any statements. It used to be lieutenants and sergeants, and then we narrowed it down to lieutenants. Or myself, of course, the captain or the assistant chief can give statements. We do control scenes, and if no one's interfering with the scene itself, then we don't interfere with them. If we need someone to step back, we ask them to step back. Most of the time, everyone complies with that, so we haven't had to place anyone under arrest for interfering with a scene. And I heard the question come up about private property. Every private property owner can trespass anyone. And I make sure that I let people know that. Anyone that contacts me that has an issue with a person being on their property or someone being on their property that they don't want there, that may be videotaping on their property, I advise them the same thing. Any and everyone can be trespassed by the property owner or the person responsible for that property. And once we trespass them, if they decide to return or not leave the area, then they will be placed under arrest.
Great. So let's hear from the select board if they have any questions for the two chiefs, and then I'll open it up to the public. All right?
I have a question for Chief Hardy, just to repeat what you said. So the steps of a private property owner or threshold, their first step is to ask the person to leave. If the person refuses to leave, they call the police department and ask for support in that.
Well, that's
Did I get that right?
Well, two different scenarios, if I may, because
Okay.
it can be a person, like there's no police going on, nothing going on from the police standpoint or an emergency standpoint, It's just a person that is on someone's property.
Okay.
In that scenario, the person can tell the person, I don't want you on my property, leave. And if the person doesn't leave, they can call us and tell us they want someone trespassed. In a scenario where it's an emergency situation, and if it's on someone's property or spills onto someone's property, that person may not feel safe or comfortable to tell that person to leave. They can ask us to tell that person to leave.
Gotcha.
And then we can tell that person to leave, and then we will ask them, do you want this person trespassed? And they can tell us that also.
Okay.
Great. Oscar?
Yeah, just a question for Chief Hardy, if you don't mind. Something I'm trying to just wrap my head around as someone who doesn't really understand or have much of a background in this. Obviously, there's been all sorts of media being shared of clips from people's shows and stuff like that. The scenario I'd like help understanding is the one where the officers are going into, they're leaving the street, going into a building, and somebody, fully out of sight of the street, down a hallway, to an active crime scene, or maybe a person with a weapon or something like that. What are the criteria you'd use to say to a member of the public, it's okay for you to continue in with us, or no, this is not the time for this and you need to wait on the street? What's that?
Well, the scenario you're talking about is a scenario that was approached by us already, and that was not the case. And so we would not tell a person to come with us to go search for somebody that has a weapon. And I think there's a lot of misinformation out there about that particular situation, which I already shared with John Potter this morning from the lieutenant that was on the scene.
Mm-hmm.
And so the misconception was that the person came into the building with the officers while they went to search for a person that they were looking for. And so that was not the case. The person was told to wait outside, and there were a bunch of other people that happened to be tenants of the building that were in the same common area that that person was told to stay in. So when the officers went down, the only thing that we lost sight of and track of, and that's why we have to look at our body-worn cameras, because that helps fill in a lot of holes or questions when we don't know exactly what the complaint is. And so what we're doing now is reviewing the body-worn cameras from all of the officers. But what we can tell from the lieutenant's preliminary investigation is that the person may have been in the crowded area and been able to come to a doorway and film down. But nobody was downstairs with them with their permission. Because it was a scene where they were busy looking for someone, no one interfered with them doing their job, so it wouldn't have been something that they would have turned around and then addressed what the person was doing at the time, because they had to take control of the situation and the person who was armed.
I completely understand that, and I appreciate the description, and certainly I can imagine that these scenarios are very high pressure, and I don't expect people to have eyes in the back of their head. And I'm not even really dialing into a specific situation. Really, I think it sounds like the answer is that in cases like that, the officer did try to say, please wait back here, please don't come with us, and that something slipped through the cracks, but
and we don't even know that yet.
Certainly,
right,
certainly.
Because we would have to finish watching everyone's body cameras, because there are different angles on body cameras.
Right, but it sounds like officers, from your description, that officers generally do have, or feel like they have discretion to say, yes, you have a right to film, but in this instance, please wait here, please wait there, please
Every
stay
officer
back.
does have that.
Okay.
And every officer knows that.
Great.
Because they cannot not only put themselves in harm's way, they cannot put whoever they're dealing with in harm's way, or they cannot put the person that's trying to get the best shots in harm's way.
Certainly. Thank you.
I think if I might just add a little
Sure.
piece to that, I think it's helpful to think of things, when we do operations, we operate in hot zones, warm zones, and cool zones. So when we identify a zone that's a hot zone, which is a high security risk, we don't allow people that aren't part of the solution into that bubble. But at the same time, there's a lot of chaos that occurs in the initial starting of a scene like that. So, to your story of slipping through the cracks, we do secure the scene, and police secures the scene. So I think as soon as it's identified that this is part of the hot zone, we start clearing people out of that zone. So there can be a time where people are in that hot zone. Once we identify that, then we start moving them out of that zone. Hope that helps kind of bring some clarity
definitely.
to it.
And I just want to say that having watched a bunch of these clips last night, it also makes it very clear how intense and moment to moment these encounters are. And I have, I think, full empathy for the difficulty of those situations. So I'm really just trying to look for areas where if there are things that need to be made more clear or ways in which the public can be more aware, and I understand that these are chaotic, and I appreciate all the extra detail, so thank you both.
Gentlemen?
Yeah, one of the concerns or questions that I had heard was around access to certain materials or time of the of first responders by folks who are doing interviews or recordings. And I wanted to confirm, my understanding is that there was a policy put in place about a year ago to where there would be a designated press hour every week, so that that would be open to all members of the press. Is that correct?
Yes,
Thank you.
yes.
So I guess I just have one more question. You have a variety of people filming. It's not just one person, right? I mean, there's all sorts of people filming all sorts of events, Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. I was downtown, I believe Friday evening. I was downtown, and I was talking to some people, some of our people that hang out downtown, and I was discussing a person that's new to town and is already having a downward spiral. And as I was talking to the person, I think a couple of people thought that I was harassing this individual, and they came over with their cameras out and started filming me talking to the person until the person told them that we were just having a conversation. I actually was asking him, did he eat? But, that's just life, and it's particularly life when you're not just the chief, but any first responder. We just know that there are always cameras rolling one way or the other, and especially with us because we have to have our body cameras on and running.
Right.
So
A lot of cameras, a lot of
cameras.
film. Okay, John.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add, one of the reasons that the Vermont League of Cities and Towns has developed this training for staff on the First Amendment is because they're also our insurers, and so many towns were getting lawsuits around how they handle these situations. So even like that one that Chief Hardy just explained, if she had responded differently, that could lead to a lawsuit and ultimately a cost to the town. And as you know, we're really trying to manage our liability costs, which have been going up. So one good way to do that is to have good training and put that in place on the ground with all staff. So.
Great. Seth, do you have a sheet for me? Are we ready, Select Board, to open this conversation up to the public?
Yeah.
Thank you. All right. Rusty E. Sage.
Thank you. Rusty Sage, West Brattleboro. Elizabeth, as you stated, you're not the social media police. However, I know a number of you have social media accounts and have probably seen some of the comments that have taken place in regards to this. Some of them are pretty nasty, disrespectful on both sides of the aisle. So I think one of the things that tells you is this really boils down to who in particular is taking these videos. That is the problem. You got to take that into account. As Bob said, you can't really take away the First Amendment rights, and I think it would be a waste of time for the Select Board to try and change something at a town level that's already written in the Constitution. As the chief stated before when they were speaking, they have different zones, they have different protocols for safety on scene. Your fire, your emergency services officers are all trained in scene management. So I think it would be best to leave that up to them. A couple of other points that I wanted to point out, you know, and Chief Hardy, you may correct me on this, Public Information Act. I would assume that the cameras that are on Main Street that are recording could be disclosed to the public if they recorded something. Is that correct?
I would believe so. I mean, we have not run into that, but
Okay.
I would believe if the
So-
SA said so.
So if there was an incident right underneath one of those cameras and it caught that incident just as close as Planet Hank did, you know, that's getting the same information as Hank does. So, you know, that could be disclosed to the public as well. Another thing to think of is the benefit of having media on scene. Arsonists have been caught from media being on scene of fires, taking pictures of the crowds. Crime scenes, criminals have been caught on the scene of a crime by the media. So, you know, keep that in mind too as you go forward with this.
Thank you very much. C. Mark Colster?
On media and the First Amendment. Goodness gracious. I think it's Article 13 of the Vermont State Constitution that allows freedom of the press. Let me give you a little replay of media from Brattleboro. We had a beautiful town here. There were cobblers that would fix your shoes. There were women's retail shops that you could get all kinds of clothes. There was Sam's Army Navy. There was, you know, all kinds of things. This was the courthouse. We used to dance till dawn at the church down the street. There were places, nightclubs, and Brattleboro was a thriving, beautiful town. The Shinla was up on Elliott Street, and the morning sun was shining in the windows. And what do you really have here now? You got the first stop coming out of Holyoke in New York City for fentanyl. You got junkies on the streets, more male prostitutes and female prostitutes, and you're trying to shut down people's First Amendment? That's not a good thing. We're coming up on the anniversary of the Constitution, of the Vermont State Constitution of Vermont declaring its independence, which actually was declared in Windham County with the help of people from Brattleboro, and the Vermont State Constitution written in Windsor County with the help of people from Brattleboro. So it isn't time to be treading on the Constitution. God bless y'all.
Thank you. Akhil Srivastiana?
It's Srivastava, thank you. Hi, my name is Akhil, and this is an important conversation for me because I actually have my own media channel on Facebook called the Brattleboro Pulse. So I decided to do my own research and do some digging. Cities like Seattle, Portland, San Francisco, and New York all have laws that prohibit following people, repeatedly filming after being told to stop, intimidating behavior, exploitation, and targeting vulnerable populations. These apply regardless of whether a camera is present. They can also be cited or arrested without touching the First Amendment. Also, commercial filming permits are required if filming is monetized, part of a business or a brand. This is how Los Angeles, New York City, Chicago, and Boston regulate YouTubers and TikTok creators. It doesn't ban speech, it regulates commercial use of public space. We are trying to regulate Hank's behavior, not his freedom of speech. Hank is allowed to film, edit, and post whatever he wants for his own political agenda, but he is not allowed to harass, stalk, intimidate, obstruct, or exploit people, camera or not.
No personal attacks.
That was not a personal attack.
All right.
But this is, hey, you want this? You need it.
Hey,
Hey.
Stop it.
Thank you.
Marcia Birnbaum.
Hi, my name's Marta, Brattleboro resident. On New Year's Eve, we had a truck fire. Took 25 minutes and 6 patrol cars to show up. When what we really needed was a fire truck. Then an ambulance for good measure. Time stood still while we waited for help, hearing airbags and aerosol cans explode every so often. Then the full gas tank blew and sprayed gas all across our driveway. It's gonna mess up my time. The loss of our truck was a bummer, though our real concern was the building that it was parked behind. The glass shop with 1,000-gallon propane tanks were connected to it. And if that building had been compromised, it would have been a serious consequence for all of us in the vicinity. The recording that was posted, that you can clearly see him tripping on the hose that the firefighters were using to get out of the way of the firefighters, he most definitely shouldn't have been there. It was noticed by one of our guests that we had this uninvited visitor. He didn't introduce himself. Nobody told us he was there. He just lurked into our property. They intervened and requested that the trespasser have a heart and not post it. His reply was incredibly nasty, and our guest had asked that he personally leave, which he did so begrudgingly, but decided to post about it anyways because he had nothing better to get his clicks for the day. If the 6 police officers who were there had secured our private property with a single-lane road and a 100-yard-long driveway, he wouldn't have been there, especially as a member of the public. And I say this because if that person really is a reporter, then why hasn't he registered his media as a business? Meanwhile, using town resources for his own profit, while all not paying the taxes to support it. People in town are not after anyone's First Amendment rights. We would like to add that we have our right to say that we disapprove of his actions publicly, especially as political representative who is daily threatening the public and reporting them to ICE or inciting his followers to be violent against people who disagree with him. If I had a choice, not even on a regular day, would I have a criminal convicted of violent crime of
Marta.
this sort on my property, nonetheless during a traumatic experience.
Thank you. Okay, Pierre Landry.
Gary Landry, Brattleboro. What really concerned me all of a sudden right now is I thought there was no personal attacks. The last 2 speakers, you never interrupted and asked them to stop. I think that was wrong. I also think it's wrong that we're even talking about this. I mean, to think that our local town government is going to create ordinances that go against the Constitution just seems like it's a waste of our time. I'm sorry, but the Constitution is there for a reason. People have the right to film in public places, and I really appreciate
Excuse me.
Chief Hardy and Simons with their expertise and knowing that they will.
If you don't put those things down, I'm going to ask you to leave.
Knowing that they'll ask anyone that's impeding their work to leave, and if that person doesn't leave, I'm sure they'll take appropriate actions. I think we should trust our officers. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Hank Poitras.
Hello, everybody. I'm Hank. I run Brattleboro News, Planet Hank, which we're all discussing at immense length for some reason. As everybody is discussing the First Amendment rules over this select board, over this town, over this country. And so I'm going to read something here. I am Hank. I am known as Planet Hank, a citizen journalist and a videographer in Brattleboro. I am speaking in response to Ms. Berry's recent complaint, which contains numerous inaccuracies, misrepresentations, and false allegations about my conduct. This appears to be a personal attack aimed at restricting my First Amendment rights to film and report on public police activities. There is no evidence of harassment on my part, and her efforts to silence independent journalism are unwarranted and unconstitutional. Now, I'm going to go through specifically via the correspondence that she sent everybody and, some of the dialogue and back and forth that we've, had.
You've got 54 seconds.
Okay, that's fine. You don't want to let me speak about me, that's fine.
I'm letting
Got
you
it.
speak.
But anyway, VSP Directive 350 does not exclude citizen journalists, even, that was a misrepresentation and a mischaracterization of the law. Number 2, tactical liability and safety. So I have like over 1,000 videos plus 1,000 more that I haven't posted for my own reasons. And this has never come up that I have contaminated a police scene, that the officers, if they felt like I needed to move back, that they didn't tell me to move back and I wouldn't absolutely move back. The situation with this woman saying that I was on her property, she can hold up whatever sign she wants now. She should have put those signs up on her property and I would have been like, oh crap, no trespassing sign. But in our state, and in almost every state, when there's a public emergency, such as a fire, which is specifically listed, someone, for the purposes of gathering news information, can in fact follow first responders and film it, and then immediately leave, which I did. As soon as they asked, or somebody, I didn't know who it was, they said, hey, blah, blah, and I said, okay, and I just got in the car. There was no rude anything. There was no response to that. Moving
Madam
down.
Chair, time.
Your time is up.
It says I have 26 more seconds.
No, it's, those numbers are going up.
But anyway,
Madam Chair, time.
Excuse me.
Thank you.
Okay. First Amendment.
All right.
First Amendment.
Kick it back to the select board.
No, we have 2 more commenters. Marta, and then, I don't know who that other person is.
The second one's Jessica Dolan.
Okay, Marta?
I actually didn't feel like the question, clarity from the answers to the questions. The question I wanted to, learn about is someone allowed to follow first responders, like into someone's house or into someone's apartment? And my second question is, whether that's true or not, I just want to clarify that it is upon the person who owns the property to say that they don't want someone filming on their property. And if they do, will the police take action in the moment?
Who wants to answer that question?
Like into your house or apartment.
Thank you. Bob or Norma, you want to answer that question?
The answer, and correct me if I'm wrong, Chief, but no, you can't follow an emergency personnel into a private property during an event or a scene or an emergency. That's, from my standpoint, interference with the emergency personnel action. And I would expect, though, correct me if I'm wrong, that the emergency personnel would say, stop, we need to deal with this hot zone, as you call it.
Yes. And I think Chief Hardy just said that if there's someone on their property and the property owner wants them to leave, that if they don't feel comfortable, they can ask the police, and the police will tell them to leave it. Is that what you were conveying earlier?
Yes.
Very good. Okay, thank you. All right.
Liz,
Yes.
I think there was a distinction, though, which is what the town attorney was saying, if I'm not mistaken, is that even if the property owner doesn't have to say, I don't want you coming onto the property, for the expectation to be that if emergency personnel is entering someone's home or private property, they don't. The owner of that property doesn't have to say, I don't want media here. The expectation would be that the emergency personnel would address.
But there is, Hannah, you were saying something about no trespassing signs being appropriate.
Yes, this came up in our prior discussions regarding trespassing. There needs to be actual notice in the form of either verbal communication or signs or placards or something to indicate that you cannot trespass, but you can't get you can't say, like, I'm going to follow first responders onto private property because I have the right to film them. That doesn't supersede that privacy boundary, but that you can't be arrested for trespassing unless you've been given notice that you aren't allowed to trespass.
Either personally or posted.
Posted, yeah.
Yes.
The distinction I'm trying to understand is that there's one thing if someone's entering someone's yard, right? But I think what the town Bob was saying was that in terms of entering someone's house or apartment, their dwelling, you don't need to put up a no trespassing sign on your front door to have the expectation that you would decide who comes into your home, right?
There still needs to be notice under 3705, which is the unlawful trespass. But I think what you're getting at there is there's also another statute, criminal statute, that if you're interfering with an investigation or a scene, you can be criminally prosecuted for that. So in that scenario, if somebody going right in behind the police officer or the fire fighter into the burning building or the crime scene, that I think is interference. And I would expect that the emergency personnel would say, stop, go back, and if they don't, then they could be arrested for that interference at that point.
Thank you.
All right, let's hear from Jessica. Let these two people.
Can you hear me okay? Okay, Dr. Dolan, District 8. I just want to point out that the First Amendment constitutional right to free speech is not absolute. And that when it comes to a question of harming and exploiting people, that should not supersede people's civil or human rights. In fact, the state government is considering such a case this week with regards to the non-consensual filming of minors that was then used for personal gain by a person here in Vermont. I also want to bring it over to the fact that some of the media usage has been used to slander people in the town, kinds of people, violating our civil rights, as well as basically amounting to a smear campaign of constantly degrading our community. And that the media in question would be more supported as an action of free speech if its subject weren't just to denigrate our community constantly. I think it's bad for our town, bad for our community rapport, and bad for business, frankly. It's divisive and negative. And so that's just what I want to say. I think that there's very good reasons for people to feel upset that there is someone constantly filming people in bad moments and making our community look horrible. And that contributes to the divisiveness and the poor mental health of many members of our community. And that's something to consider. I feel every single confidence from hearing the police and fire department that they have their procedures in place. But I think when it comes to reporting, it's important for reporters to have a very transparent ethics statement and a professional review process that they adhere to guarantee that they abide by their ethical standard. Okay? Thanks.
All right, I will let this person speak, and then Marta, you may speak for a moment. Jackie, you can speak too, and the person in the striped shirt. Yes.
Sure. Angela Earl Gray. I know it's really easy to fall back on the Constitution, but the reality is we know that every constitutional right has limits, right? You can't bring your gun with you to the courthouse. You have responsibilities when you're speaking. And I'm curious if you can just elaborate. You talked about people having a right to film public officials in public spaces, but what about private citizens who are being kept in public spaces and sort of displayed to be filmed when they don't have an option to remove themselves? At what point does the right to not be harassed for minors, for people having medical emergencies, what training do people have on where those rights come together and when there should be appropriate limitations to protect the town? And then my other comment is just about the person saying that you could just request the traffic camera video. You couldn't, because if it was a minor, if it was a medical situation, you would redact it and you would say it's not appropriate to share. So why is it appropriate to share if someone's standing there when it wouldn't be appropriate to release to them?
Bob or Hannah, would you like to comment on that?
I'll try. You're absolutely correct that the constitutional rights have time, place, and manner restrictions. We also have laws with regard to stalking, so that if there's a course of conduct and somebody is intending to harass and it happens repetitively, we have laws that address that. That may be a little different than just filming in public. We do have laws that have exemptions to what is a public record based on whether it has confidential medical information to it. So you're correct. There are lots of exceptions to a lot of our rules or to constitutional rights. But from the standpoint of just being in a public place and being filmed, so long as that is not a course of conduct, harassment, and that's going to be a case-by-case basis on stalking issues. But you have the right to do that if you're on public property. So it's really hard to answer that question in a vacuum without a case-by-case or specific examples. But
Excuse me. Now, did a select board member, did you raise your hand?
Yeah.
Yes.
Just a
Oscar.
clarifying question for Bob. In those cases where, there's a First Amendment right, but somebody is, let's say, committing the crime of stalking, the recourse there would be some sort of criminal action, right?
Absolutely. You
Yeah.
would call the police would investigate the circumstances involving the alleged stalking, and then if the person, if that's sufficient, then the state's attorney would bring a criminal information on that.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we have just a few more commenters, and then we're going to wrap this up. So, Jackie.
Jackie Reese, District 9 rep. Just a couple of things. First, I want to remind everybody that right now this, the Trump administration is trying to restrict access to filming ICE and police. And where would we be with that if that was to happen? And if it was restricted to post those videos, there would be no accountability. And this is also a reminder that a restriction is not on a single person. If you start putting restrictions, you can't say this just applies to this person. It has to apply across the board. So if you're going to restrict filming of incidents that include the police and the fire department and other agencies of this town, it's going to be across the board. And we don't know what will happen with that in the future. So as for minors, filming minors in these situations is what brought Liam Ramos home. Let's not forget that. And as Oscar said, if there is an illegal action that should be restricted or anything like that, you can bring that case to court. You can call the police on it, and they will respond. Contrary to other people's opinions, they will respond.
Thank you. Person in the striped sweater.
Hi, Carly Chickering. My question is something John brought up. He brought up the point that we need to limit liability, right, for our town. And I'm just thinking back on a few of the social media, YouTuber things that I've seen that have brought that question into my mind. For example, there was a time when someone conducted a police chase up 91 on his own. Thinking about the situation that I think Chief Hardy was probably alluding to earlier, where it appears that someone was filming very close to a scene where there was a weapon drawn and someone on the floor inside a building. And then some other footage that I've seen where someone bragged about being misunderstanding where the police officers were going from one scene to another and getting there before them and provoking the person who was under distress. And I guess my question is just mostly about, can any of that be traced back to, inappropriate relationships or communication that could become a liability for us?
Thank you. Anyone to respond?
No, I mean,
Okay.
I was just referencing what.
Okay.
that-
Gemma, you have 2 minutes, and then Marta, I'll give you 1 minute.
Hi, Gemma Seymour again. I just want to get some clarification on 13 VSA 3705. Subsection A is very clear about the requirement for notice of trespass to be affirmatively given. But subsection E reads, a person who enters a dwelling house, whether or not a person is actually present, knowing that the person is not licensed or privileged to do so, shall be imprisoned, stating that it's a crime. And I would like to get some clarification on what exactly would constitute then a license or privilege to enter someone else's dwelling house in a situation like this, because that says to me pretty clearly that affirmative access would have to be given in order for that person to be permitted within the residence. Our laws treat the area around a building and the interior of a building very, very differently. I think that's very well established in American jurisprudence. So thank you.
Bob or Hannah, do you wish to comment on that legal interpretation?
What she it does say, a person who enters a dwelling house, whether or not a person is actually present, knowing that the person is not licensed or privileged to do so, shall be in prison not more than 3 years, okay? I don't know, I guess it's just hard to answer that in context, because it talks about remaining on land and having actual communication. So if you know that you're not licensed or privileged to be there, theoretically there needs to be some notice to that effect. So I can look into that in more detail and answer that
Thank you.
much better than I'm doing right now, hopefully.
Thank you.
But I will look into that.
All right.
Okay, can I ask a clarifying question?
Sure.
Yeah. So this has come up a couple of times, and a private dwelling means coming into my home, which I singularly own, that has no common areas. So I'm a little confused as to what we're sort of gravitating towards here. Are we talking about like a single dwelling home, like I own, or are we talking about an apartment building that has common areas? I guess. I'm not sure. I'm just sort of asking general.
Are you asking me?
If that's okay.
I would say that, in my opinion, an apartment building is different than a private residence in that the common hallway would be a relatively public space, but the second you enter the doorway of someone's apartment, that is a private dwelling.
Okay. All right. Sorry. I wasn't. I was getting a little lost in that.
So now we have 2 people who have spoken before, so I'll give them a minute, but I don't think we've heard from Carol. So Carol, please join us.
Hi, my name is Carol. Can you hear me okay? Okay. So first of all, I'm really grateful that we're having this conversation, more conversations about what we consider ethical. I mean, all of that is important. I also, what I see is that your hands are tied at this point, but this is the beginning. I don't particularly, I appreciate people that are out there recording. What I don't condone is the manner and the people that are if somebody's doing it, I don't know. That's why, for the same reasons I don't buy the Inquirer. And it bothers me that anyone could not stop and think before entering, approaching a fire, a house that's on fire, a person having a mental health breakdown, all of that. I know that you feel like you can't do anything about that, but I would ask the town to put that message out there in a politically correct or proper way, not accusations, not going back and forth, but let us as a community stand and say, we don't like that. It's not okay. We can't stop you, but it's not okay. And that's enough out of me. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, so Marta, 1 minute.
So I want to say that it's too late for me in this instance to trespass Hank and say that he can't come onto my property, because I didn't know I was going to have an emergency. And so it's after the fact that he's already taken the tape and he's already made it public and he's already, created an unsafe condition in our property. And the thing is that, I think all community members who own properties should trespass him ahead of time. That way, when they do have an emergency, they don't have to worry about whether or not he's lurking in the shadows, because that's what he did. He lurked. And I also want to say that as far as the town trespassing signs go, I went and I got these. I mean, I have posted my land before, but it's a joke because it's 3 acres. And in my 3 acres, I'm only allowed to say no hunting, fishing, and trapping. There's nothing about other people. It's hunting, fishing, and trapping. So whether this is posted or not, it doesn't cover Hank.
Thank you. Bob, people have no trespassing signs on their yards and property, and that avoids.
Yep, for purposes of the no trespass statute, that's sufficient.
Yeah.
There are, and I don't have the law regarding posting your land against hunting specifically. I think that has to be done according to
Separately.
statutes separately. Yeah. But a no trespassing sign does work. Yeah.
And when people say, a trespass order, that means no trespassing based upon a particular event.
Right, a no trespass notice or order that somebody has asked the police to serve on somebody is serving on that person, you are not welcome at this property. And then they're on notice for that, and that's very specific. You can also be on notice by virtue of a no trespassing sign, on the fence or whatever, and you go on, you go past that sign, you're trespassing. That's
Thank you.
by placards and things like that.
Great.
I do think rereading subsection E, I think Gemma is correct with regard to that. That will, as far as going into a dwelling house, the key there is knowing the person is not licensed or privileged to be in there. So I think you do have, like in a common area, or if there was a party going on and are you invited to the party? You're going to have nuances on that. But generally, you don't have a right to go into somebody else's house, period. That would land you an unlawful trespass.
Okay, great.
So, sorry, I didn't answer that very well before, but I wanted to look it up.
That's great.
I think that's right.
All right, so I'm going to leave the last 3 commenters to speak. Marta gets a minute. Let's start with Marta's minute and then have Zoe and Carolyn.
Clarify my question, because we're talking about law and it's getting a little complicated. May I ask, or Ms. Chairwoman, may I ask each of the chiefs to answer? Is it currently the policy of first responders to actively stop press and others from following them across the threshold of a dwelling, house, or apartment?
All right, thank you very much. Chiefs?
So I think that happens in my realm a little bit less. I've never been in the position where I've had to stop somebody from crossing the threshold, but the answer to the question is yes. we would not allow media into somebody's private residence unless they had explicit permission from the homeowner or the resident. There was a situation that had made me uncomfortable. I was not present on scene where somebody had gone through a medical emergency, a traumatic emergency on private property, and it was filmed, but that patient had given the media permission. So although it made me uncomfortable, they invited him to film it. So I had no authority to, and it wasn't unsafe, so I couldn't stop it.
Interesting.
So, yeah.
Okay. Chief Hardy?
And we run into those too. I think that there's a misconception that we allow people or a certain person that videotapes everything and everyone onto people's private property, within people's houses, within people's apartments, which is not the case. We do not bring individuals in that don't belong in people's private space. What I do find is that the owners invite this person into their house, which we cannot tell them not to do. And also, I think that sometimes I'm uncomfortable. I mean, as recently as I was uncomfortable, but the person reminded me that they were an adult and they could invite whoever they wanted onto their property. So I think that there's, that misconception happens that we let a person just come inside while we're doing what we need to do inside someone's private property. And we are bound to protect people's privacy because there is an expectation of privacy within your private dwelling or your private space.
Super. All right. Carolyn and then Zoe.
This is Zoe. I just wanted to ask a clarifying question because Chief Hardy mentioned.
A little, I'm having trouble hearing you.
Sure. Chief Hardy mentioned people besides formal or even informal media filming police interactions with townsfolk. And I really want to point to the fact that there are media personnel who, like many people have pointed out, Planet Hank is posting pretty indiscriminately the footage that he takes. And I would love to get some clarity on how he finds out where and when to film. And I'm not sure who can answer this question, but I think that would be some really key information because people who are passersby, they're walking past an incident and filming typically out of a sense of protecting vulnerable people. It's not that they've been tipped off. So I'm wondering if someone could illuminate how Hank is getting this information.
I find that interesting, tipped off. I find that phrase interesting when Hank will tell you himself that he has a very expensive scanner and he can basically scan anything, even when the calls come in before they've even been clearly given out to our people. That is how he is knowing how to go to places. That is how he's knowing what the situations are. And I will say that if anyone thinks that we tip Hank off, particularly the police, then I would direct you to any of the warrants that we've served, the many, many drug warrants we've served in town, because Hank never knows when we're doing them, and we make sure of that until we've already finished doing them. So everything else that's a clear call that people have for, and what I found out about Vermont is that anybody and everybody can own a scanner. We've actually found them on warrants that we've gone to, that the people that we're coming to get have been forewarned because they have police scanners.
Interesting. Okay, Carolyn, and then Marta for a minute. We're done.
Thank you, Carolyn Conrad, Brattleboro. So my concern as a resident is there's a distinct difference in the law between my private home and my curtilage, which is the area around my home. For example, the police cannot, if they see something in my yard, they cannot search based on that because my yard is considered private property. However, if I were to have a medical emergency in my front yard, that would probably be embarrassing to me and would be something I would want private. The citizen media could stand in the road and videotape me in my yard, which is, again, a place the police could not videotape me without a warrant, and post that private medical crisis online. And that's where, as a private citizen, my concern lies, not with someone's First Amendment rights, but again, if someone is standing on public land, but videotaping me in my private yard having a medical emergency or some other embarrassing psychotic break that, you know, we all could have, and that's where my concern lies.
Thank you. Peter, you want to talk about that now? Because we're going to have 1 minute of Marta and then
Yeah,
it's
no,
back to us.
go ahead. Please let Marta go first.
Well, and this is what I bring up, is that there were 6 cruisers at my, on my 1-lane road, and all police everywhere, and it's a football field's length from the public roadway to where the event was happening. And yet, all those cruisers and all those police officers somehow didn't stop him from coming in. And also, I would like to ask the fire chief, did you recognize that he was tripping over the fire hose? I mean, he was so close that he was like
Marta.
trying to get out of the way of the firefighters. It was too close. We had
direct
heard
your
that car
questions to
blowing
the
up
chair,
for
please.
20 minutes.
You talk to me. No, stay where you are. I'm just saying, you direct your questions to the chair, not to the individual
Got it.
chiefs.
Okay.
But
So,
you're done.
there
You've
in-
had your minute.
Well, I would like to.
This is- and
my
this
minute
is-
was wasted.
Yes, but this is your 3rd minute.
But in the defense, though, that video that was shown, you can see him tripping over the firemen, and the firemen are like trying to like.
As you've said. Thank you
Yeah.
very much.
Well, I think that that's important, safety, because would I sue the town for not keeping him out of the way? What if he got injured?
Thank you
That's
very
another
much.
liability.
Thank you very much. All right. Now, there's a question for the chief about the tripping, but it's really just the same trespassing question, is it not, Bob? I mean, does the town assume
Familiar with
liability?
that post, so I can't comment on it, so.
Neither am I. I don't believe I was on that scene. I'll have to look it up. I don't recall that scene. I don't think I was there.
Okay, very good. Let's bring it back to the select board and wrap up this discussion. We have 5 more minutes according to our schedule. So, Peter, do you have a comment?
Yeah, so I've sort of just been quiet on purpose throughout this whole process. As probably a 30-year veteran in media, sitting at the table, who, when I started, would come from credible sources of radio stations and newspapers. The inception of the press pass, which meant something when I started, but you get to shrinking newsrooms and thinning interest and favoring doom scrolling, right? So my job has changed over the years. I too do a weekly program in which I invite people onto my show to have conversation that disseminates good information and decent information. I choose not to make my living in this fashion of filming people at vulnerable points in their life, but that's my decision. However, they both are protected, regardless. I guess the media landscape has changed. It's gone from being somebody who is credible to anybody who has a camera, right? There are a lot of citizen journalists out there now, activist citizen journalists, you know, and I can tell you, again, coming from 30 years of doing this and finding myself having to defend it more so in the current state we are in a nation with the things that we are witnessing unfolding, you know, every single day. I went from not liking people with cell phones and smartphones to appreciating those people in this current time and space, right? And given the context of this conversation, it's not an easy thing for me to say, but I know I don't want to say firsthand, but I've had a lot of friends who have served on the police department on the state level, telling me what a scene is like and talking about heart rates going up when guns are pulled and they're looking for somebody who might be armed, right? You know, Chief Hardy can speak to that a lot better than I am, and just, you know, this sort of Hollywood adaptation of how actual police work unfolds is a little unrealistic. How things at a first responder level unfold, as we sit here not having done it, I think is unrealistic. Again, I just kind of want to say this is not how I choose to conduct myself. I am only responsible to myself. I am not responsible to the actions of anybody else. If you don't like it, you don't watch it.
All right, do other select board members wish to comment at this time? Oscar?
Thank you. Yeah, I think I'm, again, really glad we had this conversation. It's been below the surface for a while. It's good to talk about it, though it's not pleasant. I know anyone coming here looking for the select board to provide a solution on this is going to be disappointed or frustrated or angry. I really don't know that we have a solution to offer that we can actually do, that is actually constitutional, that is within our powers. But I think there were some very clarifying pieces of information for me tonight. The public-private property question I had has mostly been answered. I think both chiefs and the town attorneys said unequivocally that the entrance to somebody's private dwelling is important and is not a place that just a random person will be permitted into just because first responders are going in the door. That is what I suspected, but it's great to hear it confirmed. And then also the importance of, if you have a wider property, sounds like posting signs is a very helpful tool so that first responders can know exactly how to behave and don't have to wait for you to give them a verbal trespass to someone you don't want on your property. So I hope people can feel that there were productive outcomes here, even though it's not the answer anyone's looking for. But I'm glad we had the conversation. And thanks to everyone who spoke up.
Amanda, do you wish to speak?
Sure, I'll be brief. I want to applaud the courage of those who came here today to testify. And my heart goes out to you. It's a really uncomfortable and horrible thing to experience. As a member of the select board, I want to say that what I care about is our town. And I care not only about our town live and in person, but I care about our digital footprint. And I care about what goes out on the internet that talks about the kind of community we are. And I want us all to consider that our choices make a big difference. We want people to move here. We want businesses to thrive here. We want our neighbors to be safe. So let's all keep that in mind. Thank you.
Isaac, do you wish to speak?
I appreciate everyone who shared, and I echo Amanda's appreciation of your courage in what you shared. I also appreciate the clarity about the policies from the police department and the fire department and the law. So thank you for the questions that were asked, and thank you for the answers this evening.
Great. And I just, to wrap it up, I assume, Select Board members, that there is no particular motion or policy you wish to engage in. And so thank you for this discussion. What I heard was that there are a lot of existing laws for all these situations that we're talking about, and also that our police and fire department and other town departments work very hard, and they work under a microscope. And I suspect that Brown and Roberts is going to sell out of no trespassing signs. And I think that when you get down to it, you know, we're not going to do anything that's against either the state constitution or the national constitution. Excuse me. All right.
Out of order.
Out of order. Everyone is welcome to have discussions among themselves as they see fit. And everyone is also welcome to continue to write to the Select Board at any time on any matter. And let's, pardon me, yes, I want to.
If I could, I'd just like
Yes,
to comment,
Norma.
because I was thinking about what Marta said about it's just too late to trespass Hank, and that's not the case at all. Anyone can trespass Hank from their property. You know, it's never been a case of too late or what time. As I've told other individuals that have written me, anyone can tell us you want someone trespassed, and we'll trespass them. As a matter of fact, we have trespassed them from some places, yes. But,
What we're talking,
you know,
what Chief Hardy's
but
talking
what I'm
about.
saying is you don't have to feel like you can't do it, that you have no recourse to do it. You can do it at any time. All you have to do is tell us to go do it, and we'll do it for you.
Okay, thank
Yeah,
you.
well, I understand that, but the statement
Chief
was
Hardy.
it's too late for me to do it, and that's
Chief
not
Hardy,
the case.
let me thank you for your testimony, and Chief Simons as well. And thank you all for coming, and we will move on to our next item.
Thank you.
Green Mountain Power.
Item B, Green Mountain Power. We have representatives from Green Mountain Power joining us. Tim.
Great.
And
Let me,
Board is looking for water.
why don't you go get pictures of water? While they're getting water, let me just thank Green Mountain Power for their efforts, because what I've seen, you know, you came here in the fall? Was it the fall?
That was late summer.
Okay. And, you know, talked about this project, and I don't think the general public really understands or appreciates how great it is that you're doing this underground work, and it's costly, and it benefits the public, and it protects us from storms, and it's a really great thing. And in addition, I get emails, I guess all the select board gets emails and the staff about where you're gonna be next. You're very diligent about that reporting, and I just wanna thank you. And now you can begin.
Well, thank you. It's
Yeah,
always
please
nice to
introduce
be
yourself.
thanked.
Yeah.
Tim Jones from Green Mountain Power. Also with me is Don Mills from Green Mountain Power, program manager for the corporate entity. Don is part of our team, our rebuild team down here, but he's also the operations supervisor for the Brattleboro district, so known very well to the town. So first of all, we wanted to say thank you to the town for your partnership last year on our Ames Hill Road project, also Department of Public Works as well. And also thank you for having us back tonight, and thank you to Dan for making some time to meet with Don ahead of time to look at some additional project scope. So again, just, you know, couldn't have done the project without the town's partnership. Green Mountain Power is very happy with the way things came off on Ames Hill Road. That is wrapping up right now. A couple of loose ends to tie up on one of the side roads there, but I believe we got sign off from the town Department of Public Works with how everything was restored, and certainly as winter sunsets here and the roads open up again, if there's anything that we need to go back and address, certainly have our commitment to go back and do that. Tonight really is a new business request, so we're in our last year of the program. It ends September 30th of this year, hard stop. So basically we're running against the clock right now to wrap up all the projects we want to do. We shared 3 projects that we want to do in Brattleboro this year: Stockwell Drive, Stark Road, and also section of Marlborough Road, but it's also Hamilton Road is really sort of the centerpiece of that program. So mostly some overhead. We'll need some 1111 permits for that as well, but certainly the Hamilton Road project is sort of mimics what we did on Ames Hill Road. It's an undergrounding project that will help us sort of really get rid of some really challenging cross-country right-of-way, but also allow us to operate that line a little bit differently along Route 9. So Dan has the information as well. So I think sort of the script last year was to meet with the board, and knowing that we'll have to work out the specifics directly with Dan on the specific projects and the agreement that we need to put in place to restore your roads. So again, really just thank you so much for partnering with us, and we look forward to another successful construction season.
So we have the select board has a paper to sign in our package.
You know, that's the model agreement that we came up with last year working with Dan's team. So basically I was just really sharing that as an exhibit of, that's where we'll start with Dan, and we'll work out any other specifics, but it's essentially a carbon copy of what we agreed to on the Ames Hill Road project last year.
So there's no action for us to take tonight?
Correct.
Other than thanking you.
Other than
which I've already done.
Which you've done. And just sort of, I guess, passing us on to Dan's team to finish dotting the I's.
And this Dan we're talking about is Dan
Tyler,
Tyler, Director of Public Works.
Director of Public Works.
Are there members of the select board who have comments or questions for Green Mountain Power?
I certainly do. We have a lot of property that was right on the project on Ames Hill Road. You might remember me.
Yes.
I want to thank you for connecting us. Kevin Gragan was a great asset, local community member. You brought him back into the team. He did a lot of front-facing work with community members, and he did it expertly, and he was amazing. And just for the sake of our local contractors, I'd love it if you shouted them out. So we had our linemen just there today, and they were who? Who was the main lineman?
You can probably talk to that. That's
Grayton.
Don's team.
So out in the field, so Jared Bristol.
And Grayton is the name of the company?
Oh, Groton Line Work.
Groton Line Workers, they were awesome.
Yep.
The flaggers were great. They became like our best friends. They
Adams,
love my dog.
Adams Excavating was the
Bucky
contractor
Adams,
that put
to
road
put the
back
roads together.
Yep.
So not only did the roads get back together, but the road is wider. There's a lot of material on that road. That road is going to endure any future weather incidents or whatever really well. And it was a hot, dusty, dry year. We had plumes of dust. And thank you to Dan Tyler when I said, help. Can we have some water? But Kevin also, really, he's like, I'm going to get the guys there. I'm going to get some water. And I think you guys were doing that all summer long on all your sites. So the sensitivity that you provided for the landowners and the kindness that it was delivered and the attentiveness was awesome. So
Thank you. Much appreciated.
All right. Anyone else? Then my original thank you still applies. And I thank you for coming this evening.
Thank you so much.
You supplied the power, and apparently Amanda will supply you with glasses of water.
All right.
So thank you.
Well, that's water for the road.
Wait. Excuse me. There's a person online who has a comment. Neil?
Neil, I just sent you a invite to unmute.
All right. Let's ask Randy if he wants to make a comment, and then we'll get back to Neil.
Hi, Randy Blodgett, District 7. I live in Olson Drive. I was trying to understand just some of what the drawing is explaining, if you could just go over that. Because there's poles now that go up on the other side of the road that cross, and it's a little different look. So I'm trying to understand the green line. I think that's the new work.
Some of it's a reconductor of the existing. So I think when it comes up through Olson there or along Route 9, it cuts behind the ledges now.
Right, it goes up behind some garages, there's a pole, and then there's
Right.
one house, and then it comes back across the road towards our house, and then up to another house, and then back across the road to all the other houses and up to the last two. It's kind of all over the place.
Yeah, so as far as Olson Drive goes itself, like there'll be a partial reconductor of that, but everything will stay as existing for
Okay,
right now.
that's what I was
And
trying to
then later on, when we have more money and we can work through it, there's a possibility that that area could be put underground at some point.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
But just for reference, if you're looking at one of our maps, green usually depicts something that's staying as is. Blue is sort of the signifier for new work. Either solid overhead or dash line would signify something that we proposed underground.
Okay, we just had the line down so many times the last 2 years.
Yeah, I know exactly. I've been up to your house.
And so, if the public has specific questions, they can get in touch with who?
Me personally?
And your,
Tim Jones.
yes, but your email? or s-
It's just simply tim.jones@greenmountainpower.com, all spelled out.
That's a great name,
How about
Tim.
a cell phone?
Okay.
802-353-0243.
Wonderful, and thank you very much.
Thank you. You're welcome.
And thank you to Dan. All right. Yes?
No, Neil just unmuted.
Neil, Seth said he couldn't get a hold of him.
Okay.
So,
Hello.
Tim, let's just stand by and see if Tim has a question. Neil has a question. Neil?
Basically, Liz, can you hear me okay now?
I can.
Basically, I want to kind of repeat as to what Amanda was saying in terms of these fellows have been fantastic out on, I live on Ames Hill as well. The road that got widened out to almost a 4-lane highway coming down from Marlboro. So for those students who are late to school, stand back. They're planning to come there very quickly. And I mentioned this to the board once before, and the police department did come out and do some patrolling for us. So I thank you for that. The question I have, though, is that the original idea was to, I thought, bury all of the lines to prevent power outages. Yet I keep seeing a lot of buried lines short term and then come back up out of the ground with aerial wires again. How does that system work in terms of reduction of power outages?
Sure, it's a great question, and thank you for your appreciation for our work out there. The goal when we underground is, getting into that 90th percentile of most of the project is underground. What you'll see overhead is either a culvert that we can't pass underneath, say something that's 3 feet or bigger, open water, somewhere where we're gonna, need to set back on either side of the stream and basically fly it overhead. So there will still be some overhead to the main line, and also the way we intercept how a customer is currently served. You'll still see some poles and wires overhead as secondary services to people's homes. So anything that's overhead and the main line rebuild, if it's not underground, it is built overhead to the most stringent storm hardening that we can have. It was 3-phase. It's Hendrix with or if it's single phase, again, putting a steel messenger or some other protective cable over the top of our conductor to shield it as the best we can. So still some risk remains with anything overhead, but we are finding that predominantly the underground stays intact, and we limit where we have overhead and try and mitigate the exposure around that as well, either with materials or other methods, hazard trees, what have you. So
Great. I'd like to ask one more
question I have, or comment I have, is that I now understand why my bills have gone so high. That project was incredible. The number of people that were around, my imagined cost was just astronomical. I have no idea what that was, but I now know what I'm supporting. But thank you for doing it.
you're welcome. Thank you.
So, and it's expensive.
Correct.
And the record of your I'm sure that's a public element. If someone wanted to look up the costs and so forth, it's on your website?
Yep, absolutely. Well, we have I think when we advertised this when we first came here, it's a 2-year program that ends. So it was a $150 million investment over 2 years. That money was put forward by our owner investor. And as we complete sections of this project, it will then be put in front of our state regulators to get signed off on. And when that's approved, that will be worked into rates into the future.
And I would assume that the security of the undergrounding will pay for itself in lack of repair and maintenance.
That was the catalyst for it, is
Yes.
to switch from
Yeah,
storm.
just so that
Yes,
everyone understands you're not willy-nilly out there.
correct. So I think March 23 storm that people remember well was sort of the final catalyst that we needed to launch this program. So
Great.
exactly right.
Well, again, I thank you very much.
I have one
Amanda.
further question. So Hamilton Road, there's a working dairy farm, and how do you plan to? Will you be able to have enough width on Hamilton Road to be able to work when that milk truck's going up the road?
It'll be something that we'll have to work out, just like any place else we've been. We've been on some other similar roads as well. So we have a 2-week look ahead. So we'll canvass all our customers. We have this work to do. Get the lay of the land and make sure that if we're working around that farm or if there's blockage one way or another, that we'll clearly communicate what that is.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Let's take a break for 5 minutes and come back. Good, good.
That's a good question. I don't know. That's a Liz
Present.
question. Is there water?
Things certainly thinned out.
Oh, we're fine.
I got some rice, what is this called? Chocolate and Rice Krispies
Oh.
here if anybody wants it.
I'm eyeing that
I can
bar.
always count on you, yeah.
I saw it in that sleeve you have.
Yeah, well, I got it from Jessica because I got my town report in on time. You know, I've written something for the annual
RTM.
report. Yeah,
You got that for what?
getting my report in on time.
No, that's all right.
You got a gold star.
I got a gold
I just
star
get threatened.
and a chocolate bar. All right. I'm sure John will be along any moment. And what is next? Oh, yes. Let's see, we are now at item C, and Jennifer Burnell, the town assessor, will discuss the 2025 equalization study results, which I explained to my husband tonight, and now I will find out if I was correct.
Okay, you want to do it?
Not a chance.
Good evening, everybody. Jennifer, Town Assessor. I was asked to come to this meeting to explain the equalized study result. This is a result, study that's done by the state of Vermont, the Property Valuation and Review. So every year, Property Valuation and Review, PVR, is required to certify the equalization education property value. The study shows how close towns are to fair market value. Because Vermont towns do not reappraise properties every year, there is an adjustment to the education tax rate. This adjustment is calculated by the state's sales study, which takes 3 years of valid arm's length sales annually. The resulting factor is the common level of appraisal, or the CLA. This is a percentage that reflects the difference between property values and current sales. This percentage is then applied to adjust the state education tax rate for all taxable real estate in Brattleboro. In 2024, the Vermont legislature passed Act 183, which updates the adjustment applied to tax rates. This became effective in 2025. Previously, education tax rates were adjusted by the town CLA only. Now, the new adjustment factor applied is the CLA divided by the statewide adjustment, which is the average level of appraisal for all of Vermont. I believe this was a reaction to the spike in sale prices for properties in 2020 and subsequent years. Brattleboro's 2025 CLA as of January 1st, 2026 is 64.94. However, the state adjustment is 70.33. So you take the 64.94, divide that by the 70.33, and you now have a state adjustment of 92.34. This number is now applied to the state education tax rate. The study goes through various levels of review by not only just the district advisors who work for PV&R, but also the assessors for each town. They work with the state in finding what sales are valid, stating what are valid. Most of them are, it's understood. what should be thrown out of a sales study. Family sales, sometimes an estate sale, but not always. So there are certain sales that just get thrown out, and assessors generally know their town and know what happened with a particular sale that was questionable, and so we work with the state. The state does contribute some funds to the towns for that work. I have a slide that shows what our CLA and the adjustments to the CLA through the state adjustment, what it looked like this current year that we're in and finishing up. And I didn't really want to do it, but I did make a slide for, and it's in the packet, for what it would look like this coming year, tax year. I don't like to go into predicting what a tax rate is going to be on a state level because we just don't know. We don't know what the school, there's a district rate, and we don't know what that is yet. We don't know what the state rate is. I know that there's been it's been published by the commissioner, the potential of a very large increase, and then conversations about holding that down in various ways. But so if all things stay the same, those are the numbers that you would have for a homestead rate, which would be 1.997, and a non-homestead rate of 1.8443. There are other reasons. There's other reasons for doing the sales study. It's for determining the education tax rates and liability, apportioning county taxes, determine whether a municipality must undergo a reappraisal, equalized education property tax rates, equalize the use values for land enrolled in current use, and equalize the fair market value found in an appeal beyond the listers and assessor level. It's sort of a quick summary of what Elizabeth explained to her husband this evening. So I can try to answer some questions if you have any, but
Great.
Happy to answer questions.
Oh, thank you. The one thing that I didn't explain to Tom was that, you know, I guess you throw out these wild, they're not average real estate transactions.
Yeah, so there's...
And I would say to Tom, it's like the Olympic skating scores. You throw out the high and the low, and then you average the rest. So I think that applies here as well.
Yes, there are outliers and extremes, as well as the non-valid sales, yes.
Great.
So,
all right, so select board members, do you have comments?
God, I wouldn't even know what to ask.
I have one question for
Go
Jennifer.
ahead.
So you said the state contributes funds for the CLA adjustment or the time for the assessor's office to work on those figures?
it's the time spent that we do a sale, we validate sales when they send it to us, and it's through the VTPI process. It used to be through NIMRIC, now it's through the VTPI software, and we go through weekly and validate sales through the system. There is an endpoint, and occasionally we'll have some questions from our district advisor who needs to wrap up that study. The contribution that they make is that $1 per parcel for the assessors to do the work. So there's the reappraisal fund that you might be familiar with. So they contribute $8.50 per parcel for reappraisal and upgrading the grand list, and then $1 per parcel for the work that we do for the sales study, because it's the education tax rate. So they should do that for a few other things, but did I answer your question? Okay?
It does. Just for curiosity, how long has it only been $1 per parcel? Is that an upgrade, or is that just a steady thing that has just been?
For as long as I've been doing this, and a little bit before. And it's in it's part of the conversation that's happening at the legislative level right now, is that per parcel contribution.
So maybe to increase that per parcel contribution to update it to modern standards.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yep.
Super. Oscar? Anyone? Anyone in the public wish to? Yes, Randy.
Just a quick question. So the CLA, now when we're reassessing, does that all get re-looked at once those results come in? So it's a work in progress?
Yeah, so there's a reappraisal CLA that we that will come out. The reappraisal will hopefully bring us to 100% of fair market value. That's the point of having a reappraisal, and one of the reasons why we are now mandated to do a reappraisal every 6 years. But lacking annual reappraisals, there is this adjustment to equalize your fair share for the contribution to the education fund.
Great. Yes, Dina.
Dina. Sorry, didn't know that was going to happen. I'll just hold it. Dina Chadwick, District 9. I just have a question. Looks like the homestead rate is higher than the non-homestead rate. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Just want that clarified.
Jennifer, do you want to explain what that means? That differential?
It's different with every town. Most towns have it. I believe most towns have the homestead rate higher. I'm not sure why.
Good to know.
I believe it has to do with school spending.
Has it?
Doesn't have to do with like primary residence versus secondary residence?
Oh, that's exactly what the rates are. The difference between the rates, yes, there's the homestead rate is a rate that's applied to someone who files their homestead in the town. You can have a residential property but owned by someone who doesn't claim a residence within the town. That would be taxed at the non-resident tax rate. Why they are the way they are, one's higher than the other, I believe it has to do with school spending, but I'm not sure.
The town doesn't decide on...
No. The education tax rate is set by the governor.
Yeah.
And that is the same rate throughout the state, and then every town has it adjusted by the CLA.
We have another question, Randy.
Aren't we in the midst of either a law was passed or it's the second year of implementing a law that's going to change the categories beyond just homestead and non-homestead, I believe, in commercial?
It's still a conversation.
It's still, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Anyone else? Anyone online? You explained it so well. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, Sue Fillion. Is there anything you want to say to introduce Sue?
No, well, maybe just briefly. Sue has been coming to the board on a biannual basis, I would say, to update you all on the Housing Action Plan, which she's here to walk us through tonight.
Great. Thank you, Sue.
Thank you. I'm Sue Fillion. I'm the planning director, and this is the Housing Action Plan report. So we've continued to have a strong year from housing permitting perspective, and I'm referring to calendar year 2025. We issued 125 permits for housing. 105 of the units were in multi-unit buildings, 70 at the Chalet property in West Brattleboro, and 28 for the Winston property first phase. And at the Chalet, we're actually anticipating that 31 units will start construction in 2026. So they were permitted for the entire project, but it's going to be a phased project. So one of the things we do to kind of keep track of the cumulative is we're always looking at the net housing as well, because in any given year we're going to lose some housing units. It can be from a fire, it could be demolition to build, demolish one thing, build another unit there. So examples of lost units from 2025, there were a couple of fires that destroyed a couple of mobile homes in Glen Park. The Wheeler House, which was a single unit on the Winston Prouty campus, was demolished, so to make way for the 28 units. And then one project that we had permitted in a previous year went from 5 units to 3 units. So we're constantly looking at the net gain in housing units by permits. And so for 2025, it's 77 new housing units. So we permitted more, but when you look at all the loss of housing units too, and in the end it shakes out to 77 new housing units. So as we consider, how we're doing towards the Housing Action's conservative goal of 519 housing units, in the 3 years that we've been keeping track since that plan went into effect, we have permitted a total of 221 new housing units. So we've made some progress. That's positive. There remains projects in the pipeline, ones that have kind of been talked about publicly that are out there, but haven't necessarily come through permitting for us. Is Melrose Terrace is going to be redeveloped with 21 units of senior housing, and I think they're planning to start construction this year, permitting a little later this winter. And then Holton Home is going to be redeveloped with 21 permanently affordable apartments, including several apartments set aside for individuals with development disabilities, in a partnership that Wyndham Windsor Housing Trust is doing with Black Mountain Assisted Family Living. So those we hope to see in this coming year as well. And then we have a couple of projects that have been permitted in previous years that appear to be stalled. And, we don't know the reasons for all of them. We do know that construction costs remain high. Financing, particularly for individual developers, can be challenging. And so those are two things that seem to be some barriers to some of these moving forward. And then others could be other reasons. And so I kind of want to speak to some of the ways that the town has given support to projects, and also give you a heads up of some things that you're going to see at upcoming select board meetings related to some of these projects. So you might be familiar with community development block grants in Vermont. We call them Vermont. They're from the Vermont Community Development Program, the VCDP program. Patrick often would bring applications before you for the town to sign off. They're basically federal funds that the state has a plan for using, and then they grant those to the towns. The towns are the applicants, and then we're often passing them through to other partners to do projects, particularly related to economic development and housing. Well, those are the two uses in Vermont for these HUD funds. So at your February 17th meeting, we've scheduled a public hearing for a development at 33 Oak Street, just around here, where the person needs additional funding to complete the project.
The project is a planned 5 rehabilitative units and 8 new units. And so that's one project that's in the pipeline. There has been a cut to federal funds, to HUD funds, to the state of Vermont. And so in the past, there were often 3 grant application rounds a year. And the town really managed this pretty well, kind of setting up a pipeline of what are the projects that are going to be submitted at different times. With the funding cuts, for now, we're only anticipating 1 round a year. So like I said before, they were kind of nicely managed for the select board to decide. So you didn't have to make a decision between projects, but that might be changing due to only having 1 round a year. The state is trying to work on a scenario where maybe they could accept 2 applications from a town in that grant round. It might have to be 1 economic development, 1 housing, but that's just something to keep an eye out for, because we were encouraged by the state to allow different applications to at least go through pre-development, which might mean you would have multiple public hearings in the end. You know, some might never make it to the public hearing stage, but it could be a situation where you're weighing different applications, you know, for housing projects. So that's just something to be aware of. And then Winston Prouty, I think back in December, you accepted a grant to the town. They basically received $750,000 in directed funding from the state for infrastructure improvements. They'll be working on the water systems for that, the water infrastructure for the first 28 units, but also expanding it. They've had capacity issues at the campus anyway, so in order for them to do their kind of full housing build out, they're going to need to improve that infrastructure. So the $75,000 is going to be granted to the town and then passed through to Winston Prouty. And that is going to require a development agreement where the town agrees to take over the infrastructure at the end. Winston Prouty has been working closely with the Department of Public Works and their engineer. So there's been discussions about that, but we are expecting a development agreement that will come before the select board, laying out kind of, you know, our working relationship and also an indication that the town would take over that infrastructure at the end of the project. So that may be at your February 17th meeting as well. Another part of the housing action plan is to kind of improve the existing housing stock. And we're constantly letting, you know, homeowners and other people that own property know about the programs that are out there, particularly the Vermont Housing Improvement Program, which has created and rehabbed a lot of rental housing units in properties. One of the areas that we're kind of focusing on, particularly the sustainability coordinator, is a focus on helping low-income households explore portable solar. It's also known as plug-and-play solar. And this is an opportunity that we had. BDCC received a substantial grant from the Municipal Investment Fund to establish pipelines of projects using clean energy. And so our focus is to look at this portable solar, which is basically an appliance that can be plugged in and help people reduce their energy costs. And so we're also looking at that for some of our accessory structures here at the town as a way to, just make it more accessible and to help reduce costs. So over the next 3 months, this is a pretty short-term project that we're being funded to do this work. And so we're working with SEVCA, Brattleboro Savings and Loan, and Bright Saver, which is a national nonprofit. There is work at the state level to ease the regulatory pathway for these projects, but we're trying to build that pipeline. And Bright Saver is really interested in doing a demonstration pilot project once it's approved by the legislators, or if it gets approved by the legislators, which looks like it will. And to demonstrate how it can help people save energy bills. So we're kind of Stephen is doing some background work, working with particularly Tri-Park, but also some of the Housing Trust and others in the bank. And then I wanted to just change gears a little bit and touch on a new program that I think you'll be hearing more about in the next couple of years, maybe even sooner. That's the CHIP, the Community Housing Infrastructure Program. This was passed by the legislature in 2025, and it's quickly ramping up. It is a project-specific tax increment program, so it's a financing tool where you basically subsidize redevelopment by capturing future increases in property tax revenue resulting from the new project. So in Vermont, if you've ever heard of tax increment financing, TIF districts, this is a project-specific kind of TIF district where it's not a district, it's a site, it's a project. But it does the same thing. Basically, the way it works is you kind of freeze the tax value of the property, and then as you know, say it's a 20-year payback period, you're basically taking the increase of it and paying down the debt of building the infrastructure for the project. So, and infrastructure here is used broadly. It can be water and sewer infrastructure, it can be parking, it can be sidewalks, other public improvements. And it's designed specifically to create housing and grow the grand list without raising taxes. So I'm still learning more about it. The guidelines have been released, and for any project that's maybe interested in pursuing the CHIP, they've got a pre-application form. It's, you know, I think that there is interest from some developers. It's a way to kind of bridge the gap of construction costs and, again, grow the grand list. But I think it's going to be complex. It's going to be, involve finance professionals, legal professionals. So I just want to put that on your radar. You might see that there's some training that's out there at this time that's kind of going around from VLCT and other organizations. And with that, that's kind of what I had prepared for you. I do have two particular town properties that we could talk about, or we could save that when we come back with vacant lands inventory with some recommendations. So however you want to do that.
Thank you so much, Sue. I think we should save the town-owned property for another evening because we all want to get our heads around that.
Mm-hmm.
But I will thank you. And I also want to mention that we are known across the state for our inclusive zoning and what you've done for the planning and development regulations to encourage housing. And I think we can all see that that and the housing plan is all coming to fruition, and I appreciate that.
Thank you.
But there were two things that I wanted specifically to discuss. One is Holton Home. I thought Holton Home had some sort of a restrictive covenant on it that would not allow this. Last I heard it was nurses, traveling nurses. What happened?
Yeah, I think I don't know exactly why there was. I don't really recall what the restrictive covenants was. I do recall hearing about one. And I think that's when, at that point, M&S was working on the traveling nurses. And I think there was, Wyndham and Windsor Housing Trust had kind of like the first, if I recall correctly, they had some first option for development or whatever it was coming to them. I'm not exactly sure. I know
has that gone through the land use review process?
Not yet. Not yet. I think that if I recall correctly, when they went to the traveling nurses, that did. And so this new plan is basically, I think that, well, I can't speak to why the traveling nurses didn't work out because I don't know exactly why, but
okay.
But anyway, it's the next iteration of the Holton home.
Okay. And then I have one more question before I let my,
So I was just gonna offer,
go ahead.
I think the covenant had to do with healthcare and care. And I think that's what it is, and with the
So
current.
this is a through line.
This,
with
yeah, so
care.
this follows with the assistant of designating so many houses for individuals with developmental delays. It holds that in
Great.
place.
Thank you, Peter. All right, and then my last question is about CHIP. Does this mean that the tax benefit the municipality would get from addition to the grand list that would normally accrue to new housing would now instead go to paying back the interest on this state program?
It would, I'm not sure what you mean about paying back the interest on the state program. What it would do is it would keep the tax value of the property at, say in 2025 a project comes before you as the select board, because you will, ultimately get to make a decision if the town would want to support a project using this CHIP financing. It would kind of freeze the property value at the 2025 level. And then, say it was an agreement for 20 years, basically that increment would be used to pay down the costs of the infrastructure.
And pay down to whom?
To the developer.
So what this is a program that lends money for interest, for infrastructure.
Yep.
But what we really have is the municipality not getting the benefit in in taxes. We might get the money added to the ground list, but effectively, it's like a payment in lieu of taxes like we had, like with the Brooks House, and limiting the taxes that this new building pays.
It limits the taxes for sure, for that period of time. But what it could do is make the project happen so that we would benefit from the full value, from its full value at some point in the future.
Yeah, so for example, we had a payment in lieu of taxes for the Brooks House for 10 years, right?
I think it was tax stabilization, yeah.
Okay, so we had that for 10 years. And everybody got money from that project, except the town. The municipality did not get additional taxes from it because it was negotiated. And so what's happening in this is a state program that takes the control out of the municipality to gain the tax increase from a new development, which I think is a doggone shame.
I think I'm not prepared to respond to that tonight.
Well,
I think
let's
it's
discuss
it's
that.
what we're going to need to delve into as somebody comes
But,
forward.
I question the soundness of this policy because it doesn't allow the municipality to benefit from the new development. And that's all I'm saying.
Yeah, and I think my response, I don't know if you don't want a response to it, is that, we need housing for economic development purposes. We need children in our schools. And so, if a project is not going to work because there's just this big gap, and, so that's the alternative. Right.
Well, that's all very nice, but, we as a municipality suffer. We're the ones who would be bearing the brunt of it because, once again, everybody would be, running around developing. But what we would expect in terms of addition to the grand list would be increase to our tax base. But that's being stymied. John, did you want to?
Well, I did just want to say that, of course, the board would approve any use of this, and there would be a development agreement. So if you wanted that to be a shorter duration, it would generate less funding, but it might bring it onto the grand list sooner, and so that the town would benefit sooner. But as Sue was saying, it's really an attempt to try to make some of these projects that have been stalled actually happen, so.
Well, more to come on that. Are there other select board members who'd like to comment? Yes, Oscar.
Yes, thank you. Well, we could probably talk for hours about this, but I don't want to do that right now. So just thank you for all the information. The success with the housing permitting is excellent. I was here earlier today, so I want to at least mention that I ran into Stephen and Brian with a bunch of boxes in the hallway for the plug-and-play solar, which is very cool, which I didn't even know was physically possible, but it's basically a panel that, maybe you mount out of your window of your apartment and then a big appliance, and you just plug it into your wall outlet, and it essentially feeds power to your circuit, which is kind of crazy, but makes a lot of sense. And I think there's quite a bit of money potentially in the offing for that project if it all goes through the way we hope. Like, I believe, do you know the number offhand? I don't want to misquote it.
Do you mean for like the next phase?
Yeah, for the next phase if that happens.
It's at least a couple $100,000, if not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, so anyway, that's an exciting possibility down the road. And then, well, I also want to talk about CHIP, but I think it's good. It's exciting. Tax increment financing is a tool that we can use when we choose. It's certainly not something that's being foisted on us or that would take anything away from us that we don't want to pursue. But yeah, if it's something like tax stabilization that can get us over the last mile for some project, the only benefit, it is not the case that the only benefit for new development in Brattleboro is just growing the grand list. So I'm excited to learn more about it. And my question for you is, where do you see the town's role? Is this a thing where we're mostly educating people about the program's existence and the options, and then developers will approach the town, or something else?
Yeah, I think it takes place in the conversations that we're having as people are bringing, development there, and they're asking about what tools exist. I think it is going to take education for the community to understand how it works, and I'm trying to get up to speed on some of that as well. But initially, I think it's going to be up to a developer if they want to pursue it with the town. And like I said, it's pretty sophisticated. It's not, just somebody doing a small. There's risk for a developer. Could be risk to the town. So you really want to make sure the development agreement is.
And like you said, the boundaries seem to be designed to be relatively loose in terms of infrastructure. So, for example, my understanding is that something like new development is going up. There is a sidewalk leading there that is in very bad repair. That's probably the sort of thing that could be folded into a project like this, which, nothing comes for free, but it would be a way to get a bunch of work done on what are pretty favorable terms as far as financing goes.
Yes.
So.
That's correct. So there can be the public benefit that way. We can
Right.
improve our infrastructure through this.
Okay.
Definitely.
Well, awesome. All right, well, I'm looking forward to hearing more about that, but thank you for the whole report. It's great.
You're welcome.
Amanda?
Great. Sue, thank you so much. It's very inspiring as we look toward the future. All of this is so exciting. So a couple, just a clarifying question. You had mentioned we may have to be weighing different projects could you clarify what you mean by that?
So in the past, because there's been like 3 rounds annually for Vermont, or for community development block grants, VCDP grants, we call them here in Vermont, it was the case where, they were just managed in a way, okay, Wyndham Windsor Housing Trust, you'll apply at this time, and, Community Development Support Inc., you'll apply at this time. So we were able to put, several projects up a year. But I think, and this is probably a conversation with John as well, how do we want to manage those projects? if we're only able to submit one and we have a couple of housing projects coming forward seeking assistance through these funds, how do we want to do it?
And the other question I had was about the Oak Street property that was referred to. You, just for clarification, you said that they may be needing to apply for additional funds to complete a project. Is that typical?
No, I think that most of the times the projects that have come before the board have it's a piece of the funding and that's been identified at the start. So it's, when Groundworks built their new facility, it was, a piece of that funding. I'm trying to think of some other ones. I think that's the one that's coming to mind, but, it was part of their funding stack from the beginning. So it's a little different.
Okay. Another question. You mentioned the CHIP program, and you mentioned about the auxiliary costs and needs, attorney's fees, design, et cetera. Who takes on that cost, or is that folded into the whole grant?
It will be the developer that takes on those costs. I mean, I think there's a substantial amount of upfront costs. I think it can get rolled into the eligible costs. I know soft costs can, but if the town is incurring bills, we might not want to wait, until that point. So.
One more thing, the whole plug-and-play solar, which is super cool. Like, could we maybe warn that to learn more about it for a future board meeting? To get a presentation on it? Because it sounds like it's really happening now. Okay,
Great
just a
idea.
thought.
Yep.
Okay.
All right, Isaac.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. This is one of the priorities that we identified that our chair mentioned earlier in the meeting. So good to see the progress with it. And there had been some discussion about the vacant buildings ordinance. Where are we with that and enforcement of it?
Yeah, so it kind of got wrapped up in us trying to roll out OpenGov, and so it's been a little delayed. We are committed to having it out this March. It's just doing it at the same time as OpenGov, which is new to us. So we're sending out letters to property owners, letting them know. In the meantime, we've had a lot of conversations and we've had calls from property owners, and we've seen there's a property on High Street that was vacant for several years, and that actually got sold and is being rehabbed. So as a stick, I think it's already kind of worked. But yeah, this March, because the March 15th is the deadline.
That's progress. Was that?
Yes, thank you.
Comments, Peter?
So just 125 permits and 105 multiple
Yep.
dwellings? So that's 105 separate. That doesn't include the amount of possible units within the dwelling, does it?
No, that's 105 apartment units.
All right, and
Actually out of 2 projects, so.
oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. And how does all of that compare to previous years as far as growth?
Yeah, so I would say for the last, I don't have it in front of me, but it'll be in the annual report, I think. We've been seeing more multi-unit dwellings being created. That's high. I mean, it is the best permitting. 2024 was our best permitting numbers since the 80s. 2025 was even better than 2024. So we are seeing our best numbers in 30 years.
Well, I mean, it's interesting. I was just reading sort of a study on Vermont's declining population, and but these numbers, to me, are showing sort of an offsetting sort of.
Our household size is declining as well, so I think that's hence the need for more units.
Right. All right. Thank you, and thank you for the presentation.
Anybody else? All right, how about the public? Randy? Gemma?
Hey, first, congratulations, Randy Blodgett, District 7, but on growing that. Are we on plan for a total housing mix of all types? Or where are we at with that? And
Yeah.
then I had a question on the plug and play.
Yeah, so in terms of the housing mix, we're seeing both, we're seeing all types of housing, but definitely strongest in the multi-unit area. In terms of income levels, we're seeing a fair amount of market rate in kind of smaller incremental developers, and then we're seeing some of the affordable and subsidized housing as well. As in permitting, we, under fair housing rules, we can't stipulate or, approve or deny something based on who, what incomes it's serving. So we haven't kept great data on that, but it's something that we could track. I mean, one of the nice things about the CHIP program is that it's, a lot of the state grant programs are for affordable housing. There is some for the missing middle incomes, or the middle income housing, which is up to 120% AMI. But CHIP can be used for all sorts of incomes. It's just the amount that can be retained drops, depending on the income category.
So we're just, I guess I'm just a knowledge base I'm trying to learn is, do we have a plan, so it's we're short in this area, so we try to grow that, we have enough of this, or is it just what the developers are, I'm just trying to understand, do we try to manage that, or it's a little bit just as it comes in?
Yeah, we've just been managing it as it comes in. We haven't been trying to manage and seek out more market rate or more affordable.
On the plug and play, it's an amazing thing that a few states like Utah have passed up to a 30 amp circuit. It has a built-in backfeed preventer, so it doesn't hurt the lineman. If the power goes out, it knows to stop. It will use whatever circuit you have. It auto senses if it's a 15 amp or a 20 amp up to a 30 amp, and then automatically lets that much power go in, and it senses short circuits, it senses water intrusion. It's really a neat thing. So, it's kind of, you don't need to get an electrician and redo something because it can use what's there, but if you made it better, it does even a better job. So it's something really cool.
All right. Gemma.
Hi, Gemma Seymour again. I just wanted to talk briefly about something that I bring up very often, which is, well, first of all, let me say I am just starting to wrap my mind around the idea of tax increment financing. This is something that's new to me, but it sounds to me very much like it would have an effect very similar to the program that, the property tax abatement program that the city of Philadelphia put into place in the year 2000. And what they did was they abated all property taxes on building improvements for both commercial and residential properties. And just reading from a report from 2017, what they found was that by that point, new home building in the city had increased by 376% compared to a minus 11.25% drop in the surrounding 5 counties in Pennsylvania, not including the New Jersey suburbs. So what they found was that by 2017, that it was a 10-year abatement program. They had already increased revenues to the city from property tax from expired abatements by $48.1 million, and they calculated by 2026 that would increase to another $169 million annually. Now, of course, it's Philadelphia, and they deal with much larger numbers than we do. But of note, more than 2/3 of the properties under the abatement had assessed values of less than $400,000, which is the lower half of the market in Philadelphia, 25% of which qualified as workforce housing based on the assessed values and neighborhood incomes. So I think that programs like this can do a very good job of kickstarting development in a place that really needs housing. And yes, we would be foregoing some property tax revenue for a fixed period of time, but it also adds value in the long term to the town, and once the abatements expire, it's a windfall of profits for the town. So, thanks.
Thank you, Gemma. And I'm all for development. I'm just a doubting Thomas and want to make sure that our municipality is protected.
Absolutely.
Anyone else? Oscar.
Gemma, I just wanted to ask Gemma, can you send me that?
I'm sure
Gemma?
I'm sure she can when she's finished discussing. Okay. Is there anyone online?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Anyone have?
Oscar was asking.
Oscar wants that article.
Yeah, could you send that to me? Yeah,
Why don't you
thanks.
send it to all of us? That would be nice. Yeah. Anyone else have any comments for Sue?
No?
I won't ask her to step away because she's our next speaker too. Thank you very much, Sue. Now you're discussing the cultural resource plan.
I am. It's called, and I have a couple slides to share with you, just to go through, which were also in your packet. But I wanted to present to you the collaborative cultural plan for southeastern Vermont. You may have seen it. It's got a beautiful design that Seth helped us with, so that's really great. But and I'm using slides that were from our community launch meeting, so that's why it was the consultant that put them together. So this plan was a collaborative plan sponsored by the towns of Brattleboro, Rockingham, and Wilmington, and we had assistance from the Wyndham Regional Commission. Brattleboro was the lead applicant, and we applied for and received a $45,000 municipal planning grant in 2024. That $45,000 was matched by $5,000 that each town paid a third of. And so, the idea, we started having these conversations. People were coming to us and, suggesting that we worked on a cultural plan. And so why did I think that this was useful for the town of Brattleboro and to work regionally with our partners? And it was partly because arts and culture are a critical part of the fabric of Brattleboro. And we're lucky to have a diverse and talented cultural community in our town. Since I started working with the town in 2009, there's been lots of efforts around cultural planning and creative economy planning. But we never had we had projects, but not really a plan like this. And so at its inception, our goals for the plan were to recognize and activate the creative sector's central role in creative capacity in community and economic development, to increase and organize collaborative capacity among creative sector players, businesses, organizations, and individuals, and to kind of foster relationships between them, to strengthen, leverage, and coordinate energies and resources to address community needs, and to serve as a resource for communities in the development and updating of town plans, which Brattleboro is in the process of doing, and you'll hear about that more at an upcoming meeting too. We all know that Vermont's an attractive place to live and work. We have a particular brand and a quality of life here, and the nature of our creative sector aligns with that brand. And when I was recently doing stakeholder engagement for the town plan, I consistently heard that people were attracted to Brattleboro with the arts and the cultural experiences that they can have here. So this is town residents saying that this is one of the things they appreciate most about Brattleboro. Peter, you referred to Vermont's declining population. So just this past week, it was reported that Vermont has posted its largest decline by percentage in the country, losing more than 1,800 residences. And this is both due to an aging population and migration. And so as we think about ways to attract people and investment to Brattleboro and to Southeast Vermont, we need to look at our strengths. And as I just kind of mentioned, the creative sector and the arts and cultural experiences and the people who do them are one of our assets. During the project, we confirmed that the creative sector is one of Vermont's largest economic drivers, and we learned that the Wyndham region ranks very high in national creative economy metrics. Across the region, there are nearly 100 nonprofit arts and cultural organizations in all forms of the arts, arts education, providing community access, and around history and heritage. And the majority of these organizations are here in Brattleboro. Earnings across the creative industries were nearly $78 million in 2023, and there were over 2,100 creative jobs located here in the Wyndham region. That's about 4% of the population and greater than 10% of the jobs in the region. And this is in the reporting, comes from the U.S. Census Bureau and the Creative Vitality Suite that aggregates all this information. And so I'm just pointing these out as to the economic reasons why Brattleboro and Wilmington and Rockingham were really interested in looking at this sector and figuring out ways that we can leverage it and strengthen it. So that's kind of what was behind. Next slide. So this was the planning process. It shows you the timeline and the phases of the work that was undertaken. We hired, with the grant funding, a firm, Cultural Planning Resources, Inc., and our consultant was Martin Cohen, who I can't speak more highly of. He was excellent. The engagement took place between October 2024 and January. It was really into 2025, probably through July 2025. We gathered diverse stakeholder voices through interviews, discussion groups, and gatherings in numerous locations throughout the region, including here in Brattleboro. 45 people took part in these interview and discussion group processes. And these were mostly creative sector artists or arts organizations that we were meeting, or that he was meeting and talking with. We also set up a steering committee that had 18 people representing cultural organizations, individual artists, and creative entrepreneurs from across the region. The steering committee met at least 6 times over the course of the project. And then we had a launch event in October of 2025 that was the conclusion of the project. And that brought in an additional 35 people who hadn't participated in the interviews. And the engagement process was critical to the project. It framed the plan by identifying opportunities and persistent challenges faced for the arts and the cultural sector. And the plan delves into those areas. And next slide, please. Next slide. So what we learned from individual artists and creative entrepreneurs is here on this slide. So in their feeling in isolation and a lack of connection, they have challenges to economic stability. From an economic perspective, many of them find it difficult to sustain their creative practice and have it be their only source of income. So sometimes they're working in multiple jobs just to be able to continue to do their art. And then obviously economic conditions and housing costs compound some of that. We heard a need for greater infrastructure supporting their creative practice. So that could be just having peer reviews. It could be knowing a little bit more about the resources that are out there to support their practice and their businesses. And then they were looking for avenues to support marketing to strengthen their marketplace. Next slide, please. From the arts and cultural nonprofits, we heard a lot about the need for greater regional coordination. We heard about the challenges to financial health and organizational sustainability. We heard about challenges to integrate with the community and stay relevant, and being, how to be accessible to the local residents, and also have local people feel like they're important. And we heard about the need to integrate arts and culture more strongly in greater community and economic development. And what I would note about particularly the arts and cultural nonprofits is that they're experiencing some transitions. Some of it's due to retirement. Some of it's due to just, coming out of the post-COVID experience and the whole federal change in funding and stuff. So there's a lot of stress. Some of it's infrastructure, their own infrastructure, their facilities, aging facilities, or expenses of operating their facilities. So there's a lot of economic pressure that they're facing. And then funding, obviously I mentioned federal funding cuts that have happened over the past year, and then even just maintaining their own donors and cultivating it. And we are in a philanthropic area because we're so diverse and spread out throughout the region. Like, we don't have this one. We're not like a city where there's a big I can't even speak at this point. philanthropic, thank you, organizations that are, constantly supporting. So, that's a challenge that they have. Next slide. So these were just some of the cross-cutting themes. Again, regional identity and coordination, challenges in capacity. I mean, over and over again, and I'll talk about this a little bit at the end, is who owns this plan? Who's doing what? That kept coming up. The need for economic development integration and equity and access issues. Next slide, please. And so with these themes and what we heard, the plan contains 4 goals that focus on, the first one is focusing on artists and creative entrepreneurs. The second focuses on the arts and the cultural organizations. The third is basically enhancing the brand of the region as a creative hub. I think Kate Traskus from DBA likes to call us the cultural corner of Vermont, some creative corner of Vermont. Finding some way to kind of elevate our brand as having a lot of arts and culture here and it being really important. And then fourth is just strengthening the creative sector. And so each goal has action steps and kind of strategies or tactics that could be pursued. They're a framework for a coalition of leadership and a path for implementation. It's designed to be flexible in the hope that we can capitalize on opportunities as they come up, particularly because we lack a central organizing and capacity for that at this time. And so, as I mentioned, there's tactics and approaches that can be used for implementation. Next slide. So what's next? I see that says what next. What next? What's next?
What next?
Whatever. So as I alluded to, we've identified several challenges to implementing the plan, and we've tried to tackle them head on in the process. We started down this one path of the Arts Council, the Vermont Arts Council had these zone agents that were working in the regions, and we were like, well, could we build on the zone agent? And then with all the federal funding cuts, the zone agents went away. So our real struggle was who was going to own this plan and who's going to implement it. And so where we've kind of settled is it needs to be collaborative because it's not the town of Brattleboro's plan. It's not the town of Wilmington's, and it's not one nonprofit organization. And since the culmination of the plan, we've had 2 meetings with some members of the steering committee and other people and some partners to kind of figure out how do we move it forward. And BDCC has acknowledged there's a place for them, and as simple as making sure that their workforce and business kind of tools are accessible to artists. We're going to do a session or 2 at the Southeast Vermont Economic Development Summit in May to kind of elevate it in the economic realm as well. Wyndham Regional Commission is going to do some workshops there seems to be interest in doing some workshops and sharing town plan language. I've already been sharing language with some other towns in the region who've asked about it. The downtown organizations, particularly DBA, are pretty excited about, it dovetails nicely with the work that they do. Can we have a little bit coordination between events that are going in the region so that somebody that's coming to Brattleboro can stay longer and maybe use Brattleboro as their hub and have other things to do in the communities? Because if we all, if we can be successful together, that helps the entire region. So, ultimately it's going to depend on this continued engagement, not only from municipal officials, but also from the creative community and the supporting organizations. But it seems like we're setting out on a path for that at this time. So with that, I'll leave it open to questions or comments.
Lovely, thank you. Colleagues, you want to start?
So this is great. This is exciting. I like the collaboration. That's key to forming strong momentum moving forward. I think that's so exciting. And You just quickly, you talked about our creative economy metrics. Is this in the plan?
It is in the
That
plan.
data's in the plan? And you also mentioned Southern Vermont Economic Summit. Where is that and when is that?
Oh, I don't know where it's held this year. In the past, it's usually held in Dover or Wilmington. I don't know where it's going to be this year. It's in May.
Right, the
And
spring one.
BDCC sponsors it, so.
Okay.
It's an excellent conference.
It's usually at Mount Snow.
Yeah, it's been at Hermitage. One year I went, it was there, but usually it's Mount Snow.
Yeah, so this is great. I mean, I think it's such a strong part of our economic development plan, and it's great to have some building blocks to go, to work through and follow a plan. Let's do it.
Oscar?
No comments other than this is exciting, and I'm looking forward to seeing where it goes. This is great.
Peter?
Good, thank you.
Yeah, great to see this vision.
Well, I have a few comments. First, just thank you always for your hard work and leadership. I also want to thank all the neighbors and friends and some of my friends on the steering committee. It's really nice to see them. It's really a worthwhile effort. And as Amanda said, collaboration is always the key. I also want to continue to salute the arts as a means to economic development, and I think we've all recognized that. The other day, I had the opportunity to meet with Zahn Estes, and it reminded me of the cultural inventory that took place, what was that, 10 years ago, Sue?
Or
maybe
I think it was
15?
15.
Yeah, so that was a worthwhile effort, and one of the things that identified was kind of succession planning for the arts, and I don't know if that was discussed, but that's a really right up there with collaboration in terms of an important element.
Yeah. I know Martin did have a lot of conversations with the nonprofit about secession, particularly because we're a rural area. It's a lot of one or two person show managing these nonprofits. And so that is a concern, particularly, our wages are not necessarily as competitive. And so.
And you were talking about all the economic pressures on the artists. Too.
Yeah. So, I think I think it's addressed in the plan a little bit with some tactics around that. Yeah.
Great. And then in terms of engagement, if there's anything that the select board can do to assist in that process, please let us know. Okay. And thank you again. Now, is there anyone from the public? Kate?
Kate O'Connor, and I want to make my comments as the Executive Director of the Brattleboro Regional Chamber of Commerce. We are on board as one of the partners that have been participating in these meetings that Sue was talking about. And, we represent the towns of Brattleboro, Vernon, Guilford, Putney, Dummerston, Townsend, and Newfane. And it's great. There is, momentum for this, which is great. In fact, I was just talking to our web designer last week to make sure that the cultural plan is highlighted on the chamber website so that people can see it. If you don't know the plan exists, then you don't know there's a plan. So it's great. Sue's done a lot of work. The people that were involved did a lot of work, and I think there is a real strong momentum. And we see it's the whole rising tides lifts all boats. It's if all of us do it together, we have a better outcome. So I just wanted to get up and say it's a great plan. Sue did a lot of work, and there's a lot of people invested in it.
Thank you, Kate. Anyone else? Anyone online? Kate? KT?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. I'm not going to turn on my video. I just also wanted to say of the steering committee of the plan that I'm so excited about the outcomes and the work and the collaboration in building the plan. As you all know, I have said loudly, I feel like Brattleboro is the arts and cultural hub and capital of Vermont. And our creative corner has an outsized footprint when it comes to arts and culture, and we should be really proud about that. We are also currently collecting some data from the Festival of Miniatures, which I think again speaks to the creative sector and the economic impact we can have when we are all working together to highlight that creativity and welcoming people into our town to experience that. So we'll be sharing more data around that piece soon. And yeah, just to echo also what Kate O'Connor was saying, that the DBA feels really strongly that one of our roles is to amplify the work of others in the region. You know, we create events and do that work, but so many others are doing that. And so the more that we're sharing and amplifying and promoting that work, the stronger we will be. So thank you so much, Sue, and looking forward to helping implement the plan.
Thank you, Kate. All right, anyone else online or in here? And anyone here on this side of the table wish to speak? I will thank you once again, Sue, and let you go home.
Thanks, Sue.
Before midnight, I might add.
Well, I think you will as well. Thank you.
All right, so John, one last item.
Yep, one last item, and I also wanted to thank Seth for his work on that plan as well. So
Oh, great,
really
thank you,
appreciate
Seth.
that. Yeah, so the last thing you have on your agenda tonight is a long-term financial projection for the general fund. And I put together a projection of revenue and spending in the general fund for basically the next 5 budgets, so F fiscal 28 through fiscal 32. This projection, it's not a budget, it's a 5-year forecast. And it's based on kind of incorporating the most current thinking on what the future may hold. I'm hopeful that this exercise will inform the select board about areas that may require proactive policy decisions to maintain service levels, to manage risk to the town, and also to reduce volatility over time. Whenever you're doing any sort of financial modeling, it's really important to state your assumptions. And in this particular approach, I went line by line in the FY27 Select Board approved general fund budget and made what I hope are reasonable assumptions about future trends. And these are based on our recent experience. They're based on current policy direction from the Select Board and also sort of likely future policy direction that may or may not happen, but I had to make some guesses about that. I did write them all down. They're in this projection. There's a column in the table that's called projection assumptions, and that lists out all of, for each line item, what the supposition was. This model is driven by 40 growth factors, and those are included separately in the projection, and they can be adjusted in this model. So if you wanted to develop an alternative scenario or a different contingency, it's possible to do that using this tool. Seth has posted this as a spreadsheet on the town website. It is available. Anybody can download it. They can change the assumptions. They can mess around with what's in there and come up with their own projection. And I would encourage anybody to do that. Some of the key takeaways that I had from undertaking this exercise, which was actually more fun than I thought it would be, were that based on the stated assumptions in this model, including some significant ones around the adoption of new revenue sources, which has been a focus of the Select Board, the overall property taxes needed to cover projection expenditures would increase an average of 4.9% per year, going from 20.9 million in fiscal 27 to 26 million in fiscal 32. This would continue our run of single-digit tax increases that we have seen over the past 5 years, so it would be able to extend that out over the next 5. The property tax trajectory is, of course, conditional on policy successes that really are not guaranteed, including the creation of new revenue sources, which, as I mentioned, has been a priority of the Select Board over the past several years. The focus in the assumptions in this projection are in 2 areas: a local option tax on fuel, which Molly Burke is working on in the state legislature this session, and also the concept of state revenue sharing. So both of these things require future policy actions. Non-tax revenues such as rooms and meals and sales tax are projected here at 5%, which is modestly above expected inflation, and that reflects an optimistic but plausible scenario tied, at least in my mind, it was tied to anticipated economic recovery from the Select Board's recent public safety and economic development investments in town, and the potential for some minor local option tax rate increases, which I think is another revenue enhancement area that we should be looking at and speaking with the legislators about. For many years, the town really limited its investment, its capital investment in infrastructure, spending as little as $350,000 a year on a very sizable capital asset base the town has, which is estimated around 181 million. And that lack of investment in the past has led to, it's created deferred maintenance, and it's also created some capital risk around the fact that we haven't addressed this, and it needs to be addressed over time. This financial projection would allow 2.2 million of investment per year across the time horizon in capital spending. This projection also, it makes no use of fund balance as a revenue source. So that means that all the annual savings, any annual savings every year, as well as a built-in growing contingency and reserve building line item in the budget, which is something that the Select Board had asked for in the FY26 and FY27 budget. Those together could really help build our reserves towards the Select Board's goal of maintaining a fund balance at approximately 10% of operating expenditure. Assumptions in this projection regarding staff salaries are made at 5% and 3% for department heads. This will, of course, depend on collective bargaining negotiations and also the competitive hiring environment that the town operates in. The overall increase, in case anyone's curious, in salaries from FY26 to FY27 was under 1%, so I feel like this is a conservative estimate in this financial projection. And it also reflects the management effort and policy attention that's been going into this area of managing salary increases. The projection also assumes that no additional staff would be hired from fiscal 28 through fiscal 32. And that, of course, would depend on future service demands, any regulatory requirements or other mandates from the state, as well as community expectations. Healthcare costs, retirement costs, and workers' compensation are projected in this projection to increase above inflation. And they are also areas, I believe, for ongoing management attention, and also represent one of the most significant long-term cost pressures in this financial model. So what what I assumed was healthcare at 12%, retirement at 10%, and workers' comp at 15%. So being pretty healthy in those assumptions. The projection also assumes the restoration of a modest investment in human services in fiscal year 28 at 100,000, and seeing that rising by 3% in out years. And the accuracy of this assumption will also depend on community expectations. Fuel, electricity, and utilities costs are projected to increase at 5%, and that's based on our recent experience in those areas. It's another area for ongoing management attention and sustainability investments like we've talked about a little bit tonight. The model itself and its flexibility, I believe, will help support the Select Board in evaluating future policy directions. And while this is optimistic by design and dependent on key policy assumptions, this model illustrates a plausible scenario in which current service levels can be maintained with relatively modest growth in required tax revenues. And I'm happy to answer any questions about this. It was quite a bit of work, and I think that I'm hoping it will help you all.
Thank you very much, John.
Yep.
Which one of my colleagues wants to begin commenting? Isaac?
Okay. Well, thank you so much for putting this together. It was something that we had voted on April 15th unanimously that we would like to see. I'm curious, this projection includes line items for revenue from a fuel tax and increased revenue from the state, revenue sharing?
Yes, like I mentioned, this includes two assumptions around revenue enhancements that would be new policies, and that is the fuel tax bill that Molly Burke is working on in the legislature this session, and also an undefined state revenue sharing starting in fiscal, I think the assumption was starting in fiscal 29, so that's not in the session, in a bill right now, but it is something that we could bring to the legislature, propose to the legislature next session, and potentially have in place for fiscal 28.
Okay.
Or 29, I'm sorry.
Thanks. Yep. Based on the input that we had gotten from the legislators when we had that meeting with them, it seems like that might be optimistic. That's I think overall that's my concern. I'm really glad that it spells out here what those assumptions are, but it does feel a little bit more hopeful than I think what we might actually expect.
And I think that's a good point, Isaac, and I think it really will take leadership from the Select Board and others in the community to see some of this happen at the state legislative level. And I've had some recent conversations with both the state administration as well as members of the House Human Services Committee about the idea of revenue sharing, particularly around the situation with the motel program and how much that's costing our town. And I've had some receptivity to the idea of, well, if we're going to put a lot of people in the motels in Brattleboro, perhaps there should be some offset of municipal costs, and that would be the state revenue sharing idea. Again, I think it would take leadership from members of the Select Board to really see that happen. And I think this identifies the importance of taking that leadership on. So,
thanks.
Peter.
Yeah, I was just going to mention to that, and John sort of spoke to it himself, that the one assumption that this doesn't make is assuming that we have the leadership to sort of reinforce that with our delegation, that these are things that need to happen for our town. So this is, part of all the talk that I do around raising revenues and kind of lowering some of these other numbers through those revenues. And John's, putting a little pressure on whoever sits at this body to keep that pressure on. So I thank you for that. It's a constant reminder that we need to constantly advocate on behalf of our town and making sure that we are adding to the pot and not just taking from the tax base on this thing. So, I mean, it's not an assumption that you're going to see in a line item, but it is an assumption that we need to follow through on as a board.
Thank you, Peter. Amanda?
Yeah. John, thank you. This is great. This is a helpful start. This is a process question. So how often with this process are you thinking we revisit it? How often do we compare it to actuals? When in the course of a budget year do we review it and kind of alter the numbers as we're seeing them? So one thing that strikes me is like abatements is at 2%. And I'm assuming that that's in tandem with what we saw as actuals for this year. But that is one of those variables where you just don't know. But we saw a lot. We saw a big increase in them. And the current tax situation in regards also to how people are doing economically in our town, we might see that be at a larger percentage for certain years. Maybe it'll level back out. So is the 2% like an average you're thinking over 25 years? That sometimes it might be a little bit larger or smaller?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, Amanda. I think it's so hard to predict. Like, it's hard to predict in a one-year budget. You know, the budget we just approved. I mean, if you think, so I started to work on this projection back in the spring, and then we were spending all of our time focused on building the fiscal 27 budget. And even that process, assumptions changed all over the place during that whole conversation, and, you know, as you know. And so, so what I did was I built this final projection based on the select board approved budget, so that at least we were starting with what we knew, our best information possible moving forward. So I think doing it at that point is a really good idea. We might learn more things over the course of the spring, and could potentially rerun a projection in the summertime at some point to inform the building of the fiscal 28 budget. Frankly, it's structured to be able to run anytime we might get a policy question. You might want to download this spreadsheet and tinker around with how a certain policy decision of the select board might affect this long-term projection.
So post audit, we play with it as well, because then we'll have some actuals going forward, and so I would like to see a plan for how this can be used moving forward, like within a year would be cool.
Yes, thank you. I am very appreciative, John, to have this and for all the work you've done in it. Even more so than a budget, which is estimation, this is sort of that times 10. So I think it's excellent that you stated all your assumptions. I think it's great. The fact that you went line by line with them is great. I'm not going to nitpick too much. I mean, we all have our own, we can all have our own guesses of what we think is going to happen with fuel tax or with revenue sharing, all that stuff. But because of the way you've made it available, if I feel a certain way, I can go download that spreadsheet, pull those numbers out, and see what that future looks like. So I think this is going to be a really helpful tool. It sounds like from what you said to Amanda that it's going to be relatively easy. Like if you just needed to drag this out 1 year further in 6 months, that's something that you can easily do. If we find out that, hey, revenue sharing is happening and it's $1 million a year, we can drop that in. If we figure out, oh, health insurance is going to be way worse than we thought, those are adjustments we can make. I also think it has a ton of value, however accurate it ends up being, just for sort of planting a marker at a point in time, and we can look back in the fall and say, okay, what do we need to reevaluate about our assumptions? So that'll be really useful. Other two comments are just that even with this sort of optimistic version, 4.9% a year, that's a pretty challenging environment. It doesn't leave a lot of wiggle room. It may only leave negative wiggle room, in fact. I'm not sure how the town would take 4.9% a year for 5 years. So I think even now we need to start thinking in terms of, okay, we may have 5 years straight of challenging budget years where we have to make tough decisions. So I think that needs to be on our horizon, both us and the staff and even the community in terms of their expectations. And then you mentioned it, but just calling out that these numbers rely on more or less, unless we find money somewhere, no pool, no DPW facility until after FY 32, which is a big ask, which I assume means that...
Yeah, the assumption was that we would not go to a bond until fiscal 32. But if we were able to secure other funding, we could potentially move forward with one or both. And, and I'm talking about major grants, and you know how good our staff are at getting that kind of money. So I'm modestly optimistic about that we could do something sooner. But you're right, this assumption was waiting, which is not ideal.
So, for example, if in August we haven't found anything, that probably means no pool or DPW facility in the FY 28 budget, unless the town wants to pay for it. Okay, great. Well, this is great to have. So thank you, John. Yep. It's a lot of work.
So, John, I thank you. And I can't believe you got right back on that horse to finish the one budget and start the other one. So I applaud you for that. But in particular, that you said it was more fun than you thought it was going to be. And so it's a challenge for all of us to play with this because there could be fun. And but also, I think most importantly, this is a tool, and we can learn from it, and it'll inform our policy decisions as we go forward. And I think we did kind of miss an opportunity when the department heads came in November, December, to actually look at the cost of things and the policy determination. So we have to redouble our efforts to do that. But I do want to talk about lobbying the legislature, because really that is our charge. And, Molly Burke has gone to a great effort in the legislature with her committee. She said the other day at the legislative breakfast that she was surprised how well received it was, especially within her department. What do you call that? Committee. So we need to thank her and tell the legislators how important this is to us. And similarly, we had a meeting with John and I had a meeting with Zahn Estes, who's a Guilford legislator who's on the Human Service Committee, regarding the motel program. And in the months since, I guess it was last May, I think the legislature has learned that there are real expenses to our community from the hosting of the motel program in our town. And they're getting it. And they're hearing from other like towns. And so it's also incumbent on us to provide that leadership, as Peter was talking about, to our legislators, to make sure that they understand what's going on for our legislative delegation, what's going on in their town, and then from that tell them that we are aligned with our sister host communities in this effort. So that's on us. And I just want to point out that revenue sharing from the state has changed our budgetary structure. From FY19 to FY27, we have a 6.4% decrease in the percentage of the budget that's dependent upon the taxpayer. And that's our mantra. We have to keep that drumbeat because, right, we have the 1% tax and we have the rooms and meals tax. And of course, we don't get the rooms and meals tax from the people that we're hosting in the motel program because the state doesn't tax themselves. And so that's where what John was saying about we need the state to understand that not only are we expending tax dollars, but we're also losing this revenue from the rooms and meals tax. So, Representative Estes was very clear in recognizing and understanding the needs of Brattleboro, and I applaud him for it, and I hope to continue to work with him on that. And there's so much in here that we need to play with and look at and understand, and I'm sure the people on the other side of the table will have the same level of fun and enjoyment that we're having as we go forward. And once again, I thank you. Are the members of the public wish to speak about this? All right, we'll start with Gemma.
So as you might remember during the budgeting process, I did some back-of-the-envelope calculations on the increase in overall property values that would have to occur in this town in order to fund continually increasing budgets. Now, those, again, they're back-of-the-envelope calculations. They shouldn't be taken too seriously. But I just want to talk briefly about something that I brought up in the Planning Commission meeting last night, which is that I was reading the Vermont Futures Project Economic Action Plan for Vermont, and they call for 7,200 new homes annually in Vermont for the next 5 years. And just doing the calculation, Brattleboro's population constitutes about 1.895% of Vermont. And so that would amount to 137 new homes per year in Vermont. And as I did my calculation before, just to cover a $2.4 million increase in the budget, we would be looking at 268 new homes every year in Brattleboro. So my question, as far as these projections are concerned, is what growth in the overall assessed value of property in Brattleboro is built into those assumptions, if any? Thanks.
That's an interesting question.
Yeah, so none. All I'm talking about is what, in order to meet the expenditure, what the current taxes would need to be. So, yeah, how those are spread out and what that turns into as a tax rate is just a whole nother question that I didn't get to that level here. So.
And Sue said there were, 221 new units proposed this year.
No, I
Didn't you?
think
That was over
125.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I could just add to that, we were discussing this as part of the housing chapter of the upcoming town plan. And over the last 5 years, Brattleboro has permitted an average of 24 new units per year. And the draft town plan as it stands right now calls for increasing that by 75, which would bring that number up to only 99, which is why I brought up the Vermont Futures Plan being so much more than that, and then we probably need even more. So,
thank you, John.
Yeah, and I would just comment that, of course, the grand list is built on things other than residential units, and so I think some of the economic development work that the town should be looking at as well is how do we increase that commercial side, and that's a big question and a big opportunity, I think, for the town. So.
And also the demolition and that carrot and stick.
I have one question for Joe. And just for clarification, is it 220 units or 220 people per year
No,
that
that's
Brattleboro would have
units.
to add?
That would be units. So at the median household size in Brattleboro town is 2.12, I think, for the entire town, and 2.04 for Brattleboro CDP. So.
Thank you.
Yeah, so it was a good question, Gemma, and one I feel like I should have thought of, but just to confirm, so John, this projection doesn't assume any change in the grand list, right?
Right, it does not.
Okay,
no.
so that's essentially good news. It makes the projection conservative
Yep.
in that way. So if there was new development, it would make these numbers better.
No, the numbers would be the same because it's just like what would be in a budget. How that's spread across a tax base would be different.
So basically, it's outside of
Yeah.
the ground list. Like, this is a steady projection from
Yeah.
this year plus all those assumptions. And it doesn't talk about.
So,
well,
I can explain, I think.
Sure.
So, like, if you look at the current taxes in the projection, so like for fiscal '28, it's 21,895,000, and then that would go up by 3.9% projected in fiscal '29. So that additional $1 million or so there, that's needed to fund current services. That additional 1 million would get spread out across whatever is in the grand list at that time.
Right. So I guess, the point I'm more making is that property taxes would go up 4.9% a year if this projection holds, but people's property taxes would not go up by 4.9% if the grand list were to grow.
Exactly. So
that's
that's why everyone always gets focused on this current tax number, and we always say, like, well, we estimate that it would have this impact on $100,000 or something. But that's always an estimate. And like last year, we saw how, this number was at 8%, but it ended up only being 2.8% increase in the tax rate. So, we've had very, very modest, below inflation increase last year, even though we were looking at an 8% increase in this number on current taxes. So that's part of like how it gets spread across the tax base and also interacts with school rates.
Yes, and there are a couple different interactions there which we don't need to get back into now, but yes, I take your point. So that was a very helpful question. Thank you, Gemma.
Randy?
So if I was allowed to applaud, I'd applaud you, John. Thank you for this. Whether it's
I might make an
optimistic-
exception.
No.
Because this is, I don't think everybody in the room and up there appreciates how useful this will be, and it's going to be on everybody involved to use it. It is optimistic. I get why it's optimistic, and the 4.9. We all have to realize the baseline budget keeps going up. So when the school tax catches up to us, yeah, we lucked out last year. But thanks for that. I think some of the things are a little high, some of the things are a little low. We're still above inflation. All the things that people came in and talked about in April and May, and they talked about this budget season. So I would urge everybody to keep that in mind, that we need to look every year. But now we have a great tool that you can say, okay, inflation is 2.6% this year. We'll know at some point in the next few months what our contracts are with the unions. So we'll know all that, and then we have that for 3 years. So then you can plug that in, and we know where we are, except for obviously insurance liabilities and those variable things. But hey, it's a great start, but we can't get off the gas. We got to keep going. Some of these things, there is software that will update this daily if it ties in with the right things from open.gov, just as a way to look forward. It's something that may be a really good thing. Each of you has a tablet, and it's going to update right in front of you.
Maybe we'll have, game night, and we can all come and look at it on our laptops,
Hey,
right?
you know what? Follow the bouncing tax rate.
That's right. I'm just going across the room. Pierre, did you? Kate? Then you.
I will be one of the people that goes on and messes with it, John, so thank you. 2 in the morning, I know what I'm going to be doing. I just want to, 2 quick things. As somebody who spent 12 years in the State House in a very unique position, things that seem logical to us that should happen get mired in a thing. So I have stories I could tell. Something that's normal is not normal up there. And then second of all, while I really do appreciate this, I'm going to come back here when the new board is sworn in, because our finances are more than our budget. And I think you folks need to start in April, and then May, June, July, August, September, October. Once a month, start dealing with our overall financial picture in this town. You need to go back and look at a 10-year, what has our budget increase been percentage-wise over the last 10 years? What has that meant for the taxpayer in actual dollars? What is our personnel expenses look like over the last 10 years? There's a whole bunch, I won't go through it all, but when we saw the department heads here in January shocked that we were going to ask for budget cuts, or budget cuts were being asked for, no one should be shocked. So I think you have to spend April, May, June, July, August, September, October while the budget is being put together, so that there's a mutual understanding amongst the select board, amongst the town staff, and amongst the people that live in this community, what our real financial picture is. Because we've deficit spent, we're probably going to do it for a second year in a row. We've used down our rainy day fund. We don't know what's in the RLF or in the special projects fund. So I'm just saying there's more to our financial picture than just our budget. So I'll be back here when everybody gets sworn in and say this again, and really encourage you to take what John did, but then layer it on this bigger picture that we need. Thank you.
Tina?
Scared of the Everyone's so tall.
You and Gemma have to work that out.
Yeah, I guess so.
Sorry, I was around it for 20 years, so.
Okay, Dina Chadwick. Thank you, John. This is going to be a great tool. So I just have a quick question about it. I'm going to piggyback on what Kate said. Is there a way to take the 10-year previous budgets and plug it in to really get that accurate information? Because that might be also a tool of what Kate is saying, is how, we can see a bigger picture. So, but thank you. I think this is, I'll be the person that's playing with this as well, because I think it's neat. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, any further comment? Anyone online? I think we've lost our audience. Any further comments from the select board members?
I have one more question.
Yes?
The item that has to do with the restoration or rebuilding the reserves for the goal of maintaining fund balance at approximately 10% of operating expenditure. Really glad to see that included here. I was curious at the rate that this projection goes about building that, how many years would that actually take?
That's a great question. It would take quite a bit beyond this projection if we depend solely on the 50% increase I have built into that contingency line. The unknowns are what the fund balance would be at the end of each year. So basically, how well do we do on the budget plan every year? That's, I think, impossible to predict, or we could make some assumptions around that and maybe come up with something, but trying to figure out that sort of timeline is probably more, we need more of a Palantir than I've got in my office, so.
Super. One more, I will thank John one more time and bring the meeting to a close if I have one more motion.
I'll motion to adjourn.
Great. All in favor of adjournment, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
5-0. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, BCTV. Thank you, Zach.
Anything to sign today?
Apparently not, but that's a good question.
Yeah, I'll probably start asking.
And John, are there going to be new material for Thursday or no?
There is new material for Thursday.